Chapter 860, Ma Duo Bao Splits Open the Skies. Chapter 860, Ma Duo Bao Splits Open the Skies. His Majesty has arrived, a guard announced loudly. His Majesty has arrived. His Majesty has arrived. His Majesty has arrived. Any person who was a soldier of the Purple Moon Empire shouted loudly, causing the earth itself to shake and their cries to ring out in the air. Ma Duo Bao appeared. He was dressed in his imperial robes, but due to the width of his waist, he had instantly lost his majestic aura completely, causing many a girl to cover her grin. However, there were also many women with unique tastes whose eyes lit up, and they exclaimed at how cute he was. Only when the air he exuded surged past like a flood did many people shudder. This damn fatty was the person in the highest position in the whole world, as well as the most powerful person there. He had no equal. Under the barrage of this kind of aura, there were only a rare few that could maintain their composure, such as Ling Han, Helian Tianyin, Feng Piyin, and the Seven Kings. They were pitifully few. Ma Duo Bao strode over and arrived in the center of the platform, prepared to split open the skies. He stood firm and declared, "I shall split the skies open this day. Long live our Majesty!" The soldiers of the Purple Moon Empire all called out loudly, extremely excited. Splitting open the skies was a grand, majestic feat that had never been done before. Ma Duo Bao pressed his hands down, indicating for the masses to quiet down. As you all know, the 5 sects are heartless and treat our lower realm like their herb garden. Every 10,000 years, they would harvest all the living creatures of the entire realm and refine them into an alchemical pill. Their actions are extremely abominable. Since that is the case, we can only save ourselves. We'll split open the skies and strike the earth to raise our lower realm into the immortal realm. From now on, every citizen in the world would be a citizen of the immortal realm, and everyone would be like dragons. Hearing the last few words he said, everyone was incredibly excited. Citizens of the immortal realm. It was a qualitative upgrade. Being citizens of the immortal realm meant that there would be more cultivation resources, a better environment for martial arts, and brighter future prospects. If the initial limitation was the flower blossom tier, then they could possibly attain the spiritual infant or even deity transformation tier in the future. Split open the skies. Every man a dragon. Long live the Emperor. Everyone shouted loudly. There were even some whose voices were hoarse from their shouts. They were so excited they almost passed out. Ma Duo Bao did not continue speaking. Splitting open the skies would be the strongest declaration, better and superior than anything else. Ling Han was also paying close attention. If Ma Duo Bao could succeed, then he would instantly be able to enter into the immortal realm and find out the whereabouts of Hunyao, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, and the others. Furthermore, the cultivation rate in the immortal realm would definitely be much faster than in the lower realm. There was no need to doubt this fact. Ma Duo Bao lifted the mountain and river axe in a single go. 1. This treasured tool immediately shone with brilliant light. Terrifying aura surged past, causing everyone to have a difficult time breathing. This was the manifestation of all the powers of a realm, the most powerful treasure of the lower realm. Xiao, Ma Duo Bao trod on air and flew up, standing proudly in the sky. Open! He brandished the mountain and river axe and delivered a heavy slash at the skies. Hung, long, the empty space was torn open by his strike, revealing a dark, silent space as if an eye had opened. Wang, the eye of heavenly Tao, appeared, still having an obvious injury. It stared coldly at Ma Duo Bao, but did not make any move. Ma Duo Bao had only struck once at this moment, and had yet to threaten the realm itself. Thus, the eye of heavenly Tao did not move, but if Ma Duo Bao raised his battle prowess again and struck madly at the space, it would definitely put a stop to his actions. Its purpose was to maintain the balance and existence of this realm. If the lower realm ascended into the mortal realm, its existence would naturally have lost its purpose. Ma Duo Bao tossed a contemptuous look at it. His whole aura began to thicken madly, increasing little by little. His whole person was exuding a brilliant golden light, as if he had become a dazzling golden god. Merely that aura would make any shattering void tear cultivator shiver. This had already exceeded 20 stars of shattering void tear. With the support of power of the nation, Ma Duo Bao's strength had reached a height that even the majority of shattering void tear cultivators could not imagine. 20 stars of strength and battle prowess, possibly 22 stars, Ling Han said. He was the second emperor that had power of the nation, and the power of the nation he had attained was more or less about how much power of the nation Ma Duo Bao had, so he was the person qualified to speak the most. 20 stars of strength was the limit. Shattering void tier cultivators couldn't exceed that, and above that was the barrier to the immortal level. That was an impenetrable barrier. However, while strength could not be further increased, battle prowess could. Don't underestimate the mere increase of 2 stars of battle prowess. Improving further on the base of one's limit was much too difficult. Moreover, it was a tremendous pressure on Ma Duo Bao's physique as well, even if his physique was as tough as level 10 precious metal. The Eye of Heavenly Tao merely blinked once and released the terrifying intimidation of the realm. This was a warning, telling Ma Duo Bao not to even dream of challenging the dignity of the realm. Ma Duo Bao laughed loudly, his hands once again brandishing the mountain and river axe, delivering a slash straight at the skies. This was an incredibly fearful strike. Not only was the empty space blasted open, it was even widening and formed a gigantic hold as if it was about to swallow the whole world. Finally, the Eye of Heavenly Tao flew into a rage and flipped out. Xiao, a ray of light shot out from the eyeball, shooting quickly at Ma Duo Bao. Even you dare to stop me? Ma Duo Bao tossed a disdainful expression at it in a domineering fashion. He brandished the mountain and river axe and slashed at the Eye of Heavenly Tao. If he wanted to split open the skies, he would have to first defeat the Eye of Heavenly Tao. This was the embodiment of the will of the realm. Pa! That ray of light struck the mountain and river axe, and an astonishing light exploded. Everyone could not help but close their eyes in fear that their eyes would be burnt to blindness. Ling Han activated the Eye of Truth and instantly saw everything clearly. He was not just here to attend the ceremony, but bore another heavy responsibility. If Ma Duo Bao failed, he would have to take over this heavy task. Thus, he now had to observe how powerful the Eye of Heavenly Tao was and what kind of deadly moves it possessed. Even if it had been wounded twice by the great powerhouses of the Rock Palace and fled, that was because those two existences were much too powerful, and not because the Eye of Heavenly Tao was weak. Hong, hong, hong. A great battle exploded in the skies. Floods of light surged out, every clash as loud as thunder. But aside from Ling Han and Helian Tianyin, no other person could clearly see the battle situation. This fatty can win, Helian Tianyin said with a nod. The Eye of Heavenly Tao's battle prowess has just surpassed the limit and reached 21 stars, yet the damn fatty has reached 22 stars. If there are no accidents, the fatty is definitely going to win. Ling Han nodded, agreeing with Helian Tianyin's opinion. Under power of the nation, he also had about 18 stars of battle prowess, so his judgment would naturally not be far off. The Eye of Heavenly Tao's attacks were upright and frank, and that was stimulating the powers of the realm to slash out at Ma Duo Bao. Powers of the realm, also known as power of regulation, possessed incredibly frightening destructive abilities. Even a physique as tough as level 10 precious metal was useless to resist it would be sliced apart just like any other. Thus, even Ma Duo Bao dared not allow the Eye of Heavenly Tao to hit him. His figure flitted about in the air whilst he continued to brandish the axe in counterattacks. Not only was he a damn fatty, he was also an incredibly agile damn fatty. He was so fast he appeared like a blur to the eye. A manifestation of the realm has no spirit nor consciousness. Are you qualified to stop me? Ma Duo Bao smiled proudly. Hung. His aura suddenly spiked dramatically again, endless killing intent exuding from all over his body before it solidified. Xiao, xiao, xiao. This killing intent, like swords, shot quickly towards the eye of Heavenly Tao and stabbed all over the eyeball. The first killing formation of the world finally expressed his might. Technically, Ma Duo Bao and the Eye of Heavenly Tao were actually from the same source, because the killing formation on his body was naturally etched by the realm onto him, and he was the strongest formation of this realm. With a long shout, Ma Duo Bao waved the axe in an attack, wanting to slash apart the Eye of Heavenly Tao in a single go. Chapter 861. Slashing the Eye of Heavenly Tao. Chapter 861. Slashing the Eye of Heavenly Tao. From the point of view of the Eye of Heavenly Tao, it had to be feeling very gloomy. It was a grand, majestic embodiment of the will of the realm, yet it actually was wounded repetitively. This was something that had never happened before. However, it had no sentience and would not really become angry. It merely stimulated powers of the realm and launched a counterattack against Ma Duo Bao. Too weak. Ma Duo Bao smirked coldly. He brandished the mountain and river axe in large movements, striking the Eye of Heavenly Tao so that it retreated little by little. Actually, it was not the Eye of Heavenly Tao that was weak, but Ma Duo Bao, who was expressing his full potential, that was too strong, so strong that even the Eye of Heavenly Tao was no match for him. The Eye of Heavenly Tao was endlessly sent flying from the axe strikes. This allowed the people below to see clearly, and they all began cheering loudly to encourage Ma Duo Bao. The Emperor is mighty. The Emperor is imperious. The Emperor is invincible. In the lower realm, every person was filled with reverence towards the Eye of Heavenly Tao. This was the embodiment of the will of the realm, and no one dared to disrespect it. If one did too many bloody atrocities that offended heaven and earth, they could possibly draw out the Eye of Heavenly Tao to kill them, and that meant definite death. But now, the Eye of Heavenly Tao was being madly oppressed, and this naturally made everyone feel extremely invigorated, as if they were slaves that had finally managed to turn the tables on their master. They were all excited, their scalps numb. They shouted out hoarsely, as if they themselves were that fatty that was showing off his godly might. Ma Duo Bao's attacks became more and more intense. Every slash from the axe would cause the Eye of Heavenly Tao to retreat a few dozen miles. He very obviously had the upper hand. However, the Eye of Heavenly Tao had no choice but to fight. Previously, those two ultimate elites from the Rock Palace had already thrashed it severely, but they had not intended to split open the skies, nor had they threatened the existence of the lower realm. That was not the case now. Ma Duo Bao's actions would determine whether it could continue to exist or otherwise. Hence, there was no retreat for the Eye of Heavenly Tao. Its only option was to fight, and that was the meaning of its existence. If it did not fight, its fate was death. The Eye of Heavenly Tao glowed. This was the resistance of the whole realm. It enlarged endlessly, and multiple golden chains shot out from the eyeball. These were solidified by the powers of the realm and represented the regulations of the realm. In theory, the whole realm was definitely stronger than any individual being. The power you obtained had originated from this realm. So how is it possible that you would be able to surpass your origins? 20 stars of strength was the limit. However, since splitting open the skies was possible, naturally, it would not be a completely hopeless endeavor. The battle prowess limit of the Eye of Heavenly Tao was only 22 stars as well, and the one splitting open the skies could draw power from power of the nation, and thus possessed a wider capacity for advancement. As the saying went, never give up hope. However, how terrifying would battle prowess of 22 stars be? Pum, pum, pum. The chains formed by powers of the realm whipped out continuously, and seemed to have woven a net that could strangle to death any living being that dared to resist in the skies. Ma Duo Bao was indeed very strong, but 22 stars of battle prowess was already his limit. Although he could still fight back now, there was a limit to human ability. The moment his power was exhausted, the Eye of Heavenly Tao would turn the tables on him and kill him instead. "Your Majesty!" the 7 kings mumbled softly, their expressions incredibly anxious. Innumerable years ago, they, too, had traveled to this point. Ma Duo Bao still had not managed to break through his limits, and they were forced to give up the venture of splitting open the skies. Furthermore, to hide from the punishment from the Eye of Heavenly Tao, they had to seal themselves away with the time liquid. Could it be that they would have a repeat of their disastrous failure and once again be left with grievances? So much time has already passed, and you think that I have not improved in the slightest. With a loud shout, Ma Duo Bao's body shook, and his whole body actually stretched out. Initially, he wasn't short, about the height of any ordinary person. However, his girth was much too astonishing, which made him appear short. Now his girth was quickly shrinking, whereas his body was becoming taller. In a short while he had reached 10 meters tall, his body tall and slender. What was fat about him anymore? He was a handsome, gigantic, and amazing man. "Boss!" The 7 kings' cheeks streamed with tears. This was their king, so handsome that even they would be envious. Ma Duo Bao had not just become fat. With a loud yell, even more power of the nation surged into his body, stimulating his battle prowess to increase further. His body seemed like it would explode at any moment. At first he was only tall and slender, but now he was shockingly sturdy. Every bit of muscle was trembling as if it were gushing out with enough power that could destroy the heavens and exterminate the earth. 23 stars of battle prowess. Realization suddenly came to Ling Han, and he said, "This fatty has cultivated an unusual technique, causing him to look shockingly fat at usual times. Yet, in truth, it is a unique body cultivation method that would greatly increase the tolerance of his body. For a genius like Ma Duo Bao, after failing once to split open the skies, how could it be that he would repeat his previous actions once more?" In the shattering void tier, the difference of a star meant the difference between heaven and earth. The Eye of Heavenly Tao had reached the limit of its battle prowess, and most likely so had Ma Duo Bao. Looking at how veins were popping out on his forehead, he could not possibly maintain this kind of battle prowess for too long. However, Ma Duo Bao had the oppressive advantage of a star of battle prowess, and that was much too crucial. With him brandishing the mountain and river axe in successive attacks, the Eye of Heavenly Tao was continuously sent flying. That place that had been torn open twice, successively suddenly split open, and dripped blood. Long live! Beneath them, cheers surged like an ocean wave. Even Ling Han could feel his blood racing. Although the Eye of Heavenly Tao had been injured twice, that was the action of an immortal, but what about now? It had finally been wounded by the hand of a mortal. Battle prowess of 23 stars of shattering void tier could suppress even the Eye of Heavenly Tao. The Eye of Heavenly Tao was bleeding, and a rain of blood also began streaming down. This was the sorrow of the realm. I, this day, shall massacre the skies and establish my nation. Ma Duo Bao laughed loudly, announcing his noble aspirations. The mountain and river axe exuded a brilliant light, delivering blows that gradually enlarged that wound on the Eye of Heavenly Tao. At first, even if the Eye of Heavenly Tao was no match for him, it would not have lost so easily either. However, it had been wounded by unprecedented ultimate elites 2 times recently, so it had actually lost a great deal of its vitality. And now, it had encountered an opponent with battle prowess of 23 stars of shattering void tier, which finally became the straw that broke the camel's back. The eye of heavenly Tao retreated in defeat, little by little. The heavens were weeping blood, but there were also trumpet calls echoing in the world that would cause one's blood to race. This was the encouragement for a hero. Splitting open the skies was the grandest, most important act of a small world. Eliminate. Ma Duo Bao shouted loudly, and the mountain and river axe shot out its brightest strike. The eye of heavenly Tao was actually slashed apart, endless blood spraying out, pouring out from either half from the skies. As blood poured, it continued to burn. Before even reaching the ground, the blood was burnt to ash. Ma Duo Bao drew back the axe, his gaze fixed on the skies. Now that the stumbling block had been swept aside, he only needed to break through the realm barrier and tear open a large enough hole. He would then be able to bring this entire realm into the immortal realm. Open! He shouted loudly, raising the mountain and river axe high, and mercilessly struck at the skies. One strike followed another as battle prowess of 23 stars blasted out without any reservations. The world was torn apart, and it was no longer the darkness of the empty void before them, for a foggy, extremely vague sight was revealed. Through this hazy view, everyone could vaguely see a new world. Was that the immortal realm? Ma Duo Bao showed off even more of his godly might. The mountain and river axe struck madly, determined to slash through this haze. Open, open, it was really going to be split open. That world's view was becoming increasingly distinct. Ling Han could not help but feel excited, his hands gripped into fists, appearing to be very nervous. Shwa! However, right at that moment, a sword flash actually slashed out from that piece of sky and struck Ma Duo Bao directly. Chapter 862 Attack from the Immortal Realm. Chapter 862 Attack from the Immortal Realm. This strike consisted in a sword ray that stretched for about 3,000 meters, just as if it was a godly drill. It had been too sudden. Who would have thought that an attack would actually come from the sky opposite from them? Furthermore, the might of this strike was much too frightening, and had definitely surpassed 20 stars of shattering void tier. That was a sword ray 3,000 meters long. It was as if it could destroy the heavens and raise the earth. Elites from the 5 sects. Ling Han suddenly stood up, his eyes filled with killing intent. Indeed, it was not that there was no action from the 5 sects, but rather that they were lying in ambush so that they could deliver a fatal blow at this moment. Ling Han had heard Yi Shuang say before that if one merely shattered the void and exited from here, the corresponding location in the immortal realm would be where the 5 sects were located. Thus, the 5 sects managed to lay out a killing formation in the corresponding space, and no shattering void tier elite from the lower realm would manage to make it out alive. However, in the case of splitting open the skies, if one succeeded, then the whole realm would enter into the immortal realm. This would draw out the regulations of the immortal realm, and send the lower realm to a random corner of the immortal realm. At least, this land would definitely be unable to block the power to split open the skies, and would definitely shatter apart immediately. But now, the skies had yet to be split open. The 5 sects of the immortal realm used this opening left by splitting open the skies to deliver a surprise attack. As long as they could kill Ma Duo Bao, then this venture to split open the skies would naturally fail. This was definitely an attack from an immortal. Otherwise, it would definitely not have been able to surpass battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier. Furthermore, the attack had come from the direction of the immortal realm, and even if it had shot out of the opening left behind by splitting open the skies, it would still be greatly weakened. If that had not been the case, who in the lower realm could withstand a strike delivered by an immortal? But even so, the power of this blow was still indescribably great. Would Ma Duo Bao be able to neutralize it? One had to know that he was in the process of splitting open the skies, and was already under great pressure in the first place. Ma Duo Bao humphed coldly, wielding the mountain and river axe. He stepped up to meet the incoming attack. Pooh! A muffled grunt, and the sword ray reached its target. Ma Duo Bao was instantly sent, flying a few hundred meters away. With the friction caused by the high speed he was going at, even the surrounding air had ignited, forming a long strip of flames, looking like a dragon of fire. He had blocked it. But the problem was that the opening in the skies above them was also closing back up. Ma Duo Bao quickly brandished the axe and delivered another blow at the skies. Shwa, shwa, shwa. With a few strikes, the skies opened up again, but it was right at this moment that a flash of sword ray swept past and slashed out at him again. There was nothing else that could be done. Ma Duo Bao could only brandish the axe to meet the attack, but in this way all his previous effort was wasted again, and the opening in the skies was once again closing back up. This move of the 5 sects was really very cruel. Would he block it or not? If he blocked the blow, he would not be able to split open the skies. If he did not, then he would be severely injured or even directly killed and ultimately still not be able to open the skies. Ling Han frowned deeply. This was not good. The 5 sects were actually so shameless, making use of their status as immortals to interfere. Furthermore, they were far off in the immortal realm, and there was a great formation separating them from here. So who would be able to barge through that great formation to impede them? If they had that kind of power, then wouldn't they be able to easily split open the skies with just one hand? This seemed to have become a problem with no solution. Ma Duo Bao was like a trapped animal, endlessly hacking away at the skies, and had to fight off the attacks from the immortal realm at the same time. But his current battle prowess had been forcibly elevated through a secret technique, and there was no way he could maintain it for long. Then splitting open the skies would naturally end as a failed venture the time his battle prowess dropped. This was precisely what the 5 sects wanted. You would not be able to become an immortal if you could not enter into the immortal realm, and without becoming an immortal, your lifespan would only be 1,000 over years at the maximum. Eventually you would have to die. Your Majesty! The 7 kings all flew up at the same time, wanting to lend a helping hand to their ruler. Step back! Ma Duo Bao shouted. Even though the 7 kings were only a few stars of battle prowess inferior to him, after increasing battle prowess on the basis of his limits, the difference of a single star was akin to the difference between heaven and earth. So how could they possibly overcome the shortage of 4 to 5 stars? If the 7 kings went to meet the attack from the immortal realm, they would not be able to block it at all. One blow, and they would all die, and that would greatly disrupt Ma Duo Bao's concentration. His technique elevating his battle prowess would naturally be disturbed, and the result would be even worse. With this shout, the 7 kings abruptly stopped. They had been just anxious, but now they immediately came back to their senses and knew that if they helped, it would only lead to achieving the opposite of the result they wanted. Now, unless there was someone that could reach battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void terror, no, even 20 stars would not be enough. They would at least have to reach 22 to 23 stars to be able to share some of Ma Duo Bao's burden. But in the whole lower realm, was there an ultimate elite like that? None, not even one. Ma Duo Bao could only fight alone or give up the idea of splitting open the skies. This was really a difficult decision to make. I said I would split open the skies, so the skies definitely have to be open this day. Ma Duo Bao declared harshly. Hung! A dense white brilliance radiated from his entire body, and he actually ignored the attacks from the immortal realm completely, and merely focused on brandishing the axe with all his might to split open the skies. Pooh, piu, piu. Sword ray slashed down on him nonstop. Blood spurted out, but Ma Duo Bao acted as if he felt nothing and continued brandishing the axe. As long as he could hack open a large enough opening, the lower realm would be able to struggle free from the absorption of a small world, and with the collision of a whole mainland, that so-called land would also be destroyed at contact. Under the regulations of the immortal realm, the lower realm would appear somewhere and become a new immortal land. The chances that that place would still be in the territory of the five sects were lower than 1 in 10 quadrillion. The immortal realm was too big. This was their only hope. "Your Majesty!" the 7 kings called out, their voices trembling. Ma Duo Bao was already using the last of his strength. This was his trump card as the first killing formation of the world, using the life force of the killing formation to protect himself and forcibly maintain his current abilities. This was to succeed or die trying. Beneath them there was complete silence. Everyone was stunned by Ma Duo Bao's actions, and a powerful, solemn, and tragic feeling rose up in them. In the eyes of the immortal realm, they were merely tiny ants, and their only value was to be harvested and refined into an alchemical pill. But now, Ma Duo Bao was using his actions to tell all the people in the world, and the immortal realm, that they were not ants. They, too, would voice out their resistance, and would punch with their fists to rebel. "We were humans. Blast through this sky. Go, Your Majesty. Long live His Majesty. Succeed." After momentary peace, it was all yells that seemed capable of shattering mountains and causing tsunami. The wills of everyone became akin to a city, and it was as if their screams were about to tear open the skies itself. Ling Han, Feng Puyin, Helian Tianyan, and the others all stood up. At this time, none of them could sit calmly. They all raised their heads and looked upwards at the skies to watch that solitary yet majestic figure stand against the heaven and earth and the immortals. Whether Ma Duo Bao succeeded or not, this figure would eternally be branded into everyone's hearts. Open! 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 Ma Duo Bao had gone berserk, and with the endless hacking from the mountain and river axe, the opening in the skies became larger and larger, and the whole mainland was also giving out thunderous noise, as if it was about to uproot itself from the earth. Splitting open the skies, are we going to succeed? I can feel the land trembling as if it is soaring up towards the immortal realm. Your Majesty has succeeded. We have succeeded in splitting open the skies. We are about to ascend to the immortal realm. The spectators exclaimed, so excited they could feel their scalps become numb. They were even stuttering in their words. Ling Han used the eye of truth and saw clearly that the skies were really about to be opened. Only a very thin layer was left now. He could almost clearly see the lands of the immortal realm as well as that dense spiritual qi that was about to gush out. Shwa! Just at this moment, a flash of sword ray slashed into Ma Duo Bao's body. Everyone paid no attention to it, because Ma Duo Bao had already suffered countless blows previously and withstood them all, and believed that this time was no different. However, after this strike, the mountain and river axe that Ma Duo Bao had raised did not manage to chop downwards. They were only short of that one last strike. Chapter 863. Failure to split open the skies. Chapter 863. Failure to split open the skies. Your Majesty, the 7 kings exclaimed. Your Majesty, the nation's subjects beneath them exclaimed. Ling Han's brow suddenly wrinkled in a deep frown. He possessed the eye of truth and saw the clearest that Ma Duo Bao's life force was quickly dissipating. Previously, he had already suffered countless sword strikes. Yet Ma Duo Bao had forcibly used his body to bear them and his life force to refine them. But there was still a limit after all. Besides, just who was it on the other side? An immortal, a real immortal. Even if the attacks that reached here were greatly weakened by the powers of the realm, they were still incredibly frightening. More importantly, the bigger the opening in the skies, the less the attacks that came from the immortal realm would be weakened by the powers of the realm, and the greater the impact they would have on Ma Duo Bao. This last strike, he had finally reached his limit. Veins popped on Ma Duo Bao's forehead. He gritted his teeth and brandished the axe once more. Pooh! But it was right at this moment that another flash of sword ray once again hit him. Shwa! This strike had lost its accuracy and slashed another spot. Ma Duo Bao's figure swayed a few times and forced himself to raise the axe again, but the third flash of sword ray shot out and struck his body. Pung! Ma Duo Bao was instantly sent flying more than 300 meters away, his whole body lying level in the air. After quite some time, he finally managed to move a finger. He gripped the mountain and river axe tightly, wanting to struggle back to his feet. Underneath them, everyone's hearts seemed to have been stuffed up with something. They felt unbearably suffocated. Some were even tearing up. Your Majesty, that's enough. Next time we'll split open the skies next time. Your Majesty, you will die. Ma Duo Bao slowly got back to his feet, but he had not even raised the axe when another sword flash struck and sent him flying once more. This elite from the immortal realm seemed to be doing so on purpose, deliberately attacking only when Ma Duo Bao got back up. This was a warning to Ma Duo Bao and the whole world. This was the result of opposing the immortal realm. It was also a provocation. I wanted to destroy your hope, but what could you do about it? Your destiny was to be refined into the realm pill, and no matter how you resisted, it would be useless. Ling Han's brow was already wrinkled in a deep-seated frown. He swore internally that he would definitely raise the 5 sects to the ground after he entered the immortal realm. As for those that should pay the price, not one of them would be spared. He had never wanted to kill someone so much before. Furthermore, he wanted to start a massacre, and his killing intent was boiling. Small Tower, is there a way out? Ling Han asked mentally. Damn it. Now the Black Tower could not instill power into him. Otherwise, his power would reach immortal level. Even if he would be expelled to the immortal realm, he still wanted to rescue Ma Duo Bao. In any case, with the Black Tower, the Great Tower should not be able to kill him. Small Tower shook its head lightly and said, if I were still in my peak condition, it would naturally be a piece of cake for me to penetrate the powers of the realm and kill that brat on the other end. But now, I can't. There was no way at all. So, he could only watch Ma Duo Bao die helplessly. In the skies afar, at that spot where the barrier between the two realms had been broken, a figure appeared. It belonged to a middle-aged man, and he wielded a treasured sword in hand. Above his head, there were 3 suns and moons floating, and even at such a distance, and with the existence of the realm barrier, one could still feel his powerful aura. It was as if he only needed a single glance to eliminate all the living beings in this entire realm. An ultimate elite of the Sun-Moon tier, Ling Han immediately affirmed internally. This naturally was something Yi Shuang had told him. Moons and suns floating above one's head were the sign of the Sun-Moon tier, though they naturally could be concealed as well. However, that man obviously disdained from doing so. It was only if such a great elite moved that the attacks would be able to penetrate through the 2 realms and still possess some might. If it was Mountain River tier, the attacks would have long been ground out by the powers of the realm. There was a hint of condescension on the face of this middle-aged man. It was a kind of disdain he felt towards lower life forms. He looked arrogantly over all the living beings, as if he was looking at a group of ants and not living beings on the same level as he. Ma Duo Bao got back up again, but this time he did not attempt to split open the skies again. Instead, he stood proudly in the air like a statue. But all the elites knew that Ma Duo Bao had already sustained heavy injuries that he could not recover from. Those had been inflicted by an elite of the immortal realm, and he would very quickly die. Ho ho, it is now my turn to pick up the pieces. Amidst a bout of laughter, an extraordinarily imposing middle-aged man strode over from afar. 1 step, and he had traversed a few dozen miles. He was amazingly fast. Ao Jian. Ma Duo Bao was already spent force, and the flame of his life was about to be extinguished. Now that an ultimate elite that had close to 20 stars of shattering void tier of battle prowess had appeared, he would naturally be able to sweep him aside easily. The immortal realm had indeed not stood by silently and watched. Instead, they had set up a very simple trap. It was really very simple. An elite from the immortal realm would ambush Ma Duo Bao from the immortal realm. After inflicting a serious injury, they'd leave Ao Jian to pick up the pieces afterwards. The two of them would be enough to deal with the whole matter. Who can stop me? Ao Jian laughed loudly. He possessed battle prowess of 19 stars of shattering void tier, and was also a descendant of the dragon race, so the toughness of his physique could compare to level 10 precious metal. He was practically invincible in this realm. Now that Ma Duo Bao was about to die, who would be capable of stopping him? Everyone was gritting their teeth in hatred, but without enough power, what purpose could mere hatred serve? Obey my command! Yet, at this moment, Ma Duo Bao suddenly spoke. From this moment on, the Purple Moon Empire will be incorporated into the Great Ling Empire. All the subjects and citizens of the Purple Moon Empire will be subjects and citizens of the Great Ling Empire. Your Majesty! The 7 kings and all the officials exclaimed in grief. This was Ma Duo Bao leaving behind his last words. Ling Han, I have left everything to you. You have to bear this responsibility. Ma Duo Bao's eyes were fixed on Ling Han. With a sudden wave of his hand, Shua, the mountain and river axe, was thrown over to Ling Han. What he had thrown was not just an axe, but also a responsibility. Ling Han stretched out his hand. He caught hold of the mountain and river axe and declared solemnly, Don't worry, I will definitely succeed in splitting open the skies and destroy the 5 sects and the Ao clan. This was his promise. Hung! A shadow of the Black Tower appeared inside his body and flew towards Ma Duo Bao. A shadow of a sword also flew out of Ma Duo Bao's body. The shadow of the Black Tower bit the shadow of the sword and swallowed it completely. Suddenly, the totem of the sword above the Purple Moon Empire immediately disappeared, only to be replaced by the totem of the Black Tower. This was equivalent to a battle between 2 nations. The Purple Moon Empire had lost the war, and the Great Ling Empire had emerged victorious. In that instant, the 7 kings had lost the support of power of the nation, their battle prowess falling dramatically. On the other side, Ling Han, Feng Piyin, and the others had obtained the support of power of the nation, and their battle prowess rose drastically. With its size, the middle state could match the 4 regions combined, and even if the people's wills weren't united yet, merely the power of the nation brought by the expansion of the territory was extremely powerful. Ma Duo Bao closed his eyes in peace, his sturdy figure immediately falling down from the skies. The opening that he had created in the skies was also quickly closing back up. He had not even yet reached the ground, and it had already closed up completely. Splitting open the skies had ended in failure. Ma Duo Bao had died. The 7 kings quickly shot out and caught Ma Duo Bao, all of their faces streaming with tears. All around them, everyone was barraged with feelings of grief, feeling an indescribable sense of being suffocated. You don't have to feel so much grief, because even more people will die here today. Ao Jian smirked coldly. He pointed at Ma Duo Bao's corpse and declared, Hand this man's body over. To dare to oppose the immortal realm, I will crush his bones and shatter his ashes to the winds. How dare you? The 7 kings immediately flew into a rage. Let me. Ling Han stood up. Without support from the power of the nation, how could the 7 kings match Ao Jian? Since he had caught the mountain and river axe, he had also received the great banner to stand against the 5 sects of the immortal realm. Chapter 864, Battling Ao Jian. Chapter 864, Battling Ao Jian. Ling Han faced Ao Jian directly. Aren't you the human that fled in defeat the last time? Ao Jian obviously had a very good memory. If not, how could he possibly remember an ant? Ling Han was unmoved and said, You are not able to represent the immortal realm yet. So don't keep talking about the immortal realm. You are unqualified. Ao Jian immediately looked angered and said, I am unqualified? And you think you are? I did not keep going on and on about the immortal realm, you idiot. Ling Han said coldly, I am in a terrible mood right now and want to commit murder. You coincidentally match my killing target standard. Ha 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 ha. Ao Jian laughed loudly. This is really the greatest joke I have ever heard. But after laughing, it only enrages me even further. Human, unless you have an instant teleportation talisman, you will definitely die today. Ling Han stimulated the power of the nation, and his power soared madly. Now that the Middle State had become the territory of the Great Ling Empire, he was naturally able to use power of the nation there as well. Furthermore, it had increased by at least a third. My citizens, today, I will kill a man of the immortal realm to avenge Brother Ma. Lend me your strength. Ling Han said, You all only have to quietly desire that I defeat this enemy. The will of the people could be gathered by the totem. Now, the citizens of the Middle State had not yet approved of him, but through this simple action, he would be able to gather a great amount of power of the nation. Hong. Suddenly, the power of the nation that he obtained increased to another level. Everyone in the world hoped that he could kill an immortal. Ling Han put the mountain and river axe away, brandished the revere life sword, and said, Today I will use Brother Ma's sword to deliver you to hell. How dare you? Ao Jian roared furiously. His battle prowess was close to the peak of humanity, and added with his powerful physique. How could it be that he would not be able to defeat even a puny human? He summoned a silver spear and immediately stabbed in Ling Han's direction. Ling Han raised his sword to parry. Ding! The silver spear was blocked. Ling Han wielded his sword with one hand, while the other formed the earth overturning seal and pressed down on Ao Jian. His personal ability was limited, and even with the support of power of the nation, he could only reach the level of 12 stars. But the secret techniques he had grasped were really too powerful and pushed his battle prowess all the way up to the high level of close to 20 stars. Ao Jian's battle prowess was only 19 stars as well, and was even slightly inferior to Ling Han's. Although he did not fall into disadvantage upon contact, he was absolutely not having the upper hand, either. What? Ao Jian's expression was filled with disbelief. How could his opponent possibly have such powerful strength? He was obviously at the level of 1 star of shattering void tier. He knew that Ling Han had the supportive power of the nation, but why was he capable of bearing such tremendous power? He pondered slightly for a moment, and could not stop his expression from being overwhelmed by shock. If Ling Han's cultivation level had reached the 9th layer of shattering void tier, then wouldn't it be a piece of cake for his battle prowess to break through to 20 stars? Heavens! Had this tiny world become completely ridiculous? Because the resources of a small world were scarce, ordinarily, 15 stars of battle prowess was the limit. For example, the 7 kings only had 18 to 19 stars of battle prowess at the most, even though they had obtained the support of power of the nation. At most, they would only be able to shatter the empty void and enter into the immortal realm, but would absolutely not be qualified to split open the skies. Otherwise, if the skies could be split open so easily, then wouldn't all the small worlds be entering into the immortal realm? But now, a monster with battle prowess of 23 stars of shattering void tier had just fallen, and now another character that would not be outdone had immediately appeared, and in the future might possibly even exceed his predecessor. Ma Duo Bao was the first killing formation of the world, but what gave Ling Han qualifications? There is nothing impossible, Dai. Ling Han used the 10,000 techniques, returned to 1. His current abilities were too strong, so he did not even need to accumulate much power to use this kind of great move. He need only wave his sword to execute it. His body of lightning had reached the level of major accomplishment, and his sword strike naturally brought along with it the might of lightning. Zizizi, blazing white electricity interwove, and increased the power of the strike further. To kill me, you are not yet qualified. Ao Jian sneered. He had to admit that the current Ling Han was indeed qualified to be a match for him, but if it was about killing him, that was absolutely impossible. The two battled fiercely. Pung, pung, pung. The silver spear and treasured sword clashed endlessly, causing brilliant waves of light to appear and ripple out in the skies. Kill, 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 kill this damn bastard! Helian Tianyan called out. As long as this descendant of the true dragon died, he would be able to easily conquer all the seas, and this whole realm would really be settled completely. They would then only need to focus on splitting open the skies. The other 18-eyed corpse king of the 1,000-corpse sect had been killed by Ma Duo Bao. Previously, they had wanted to lure Ma Duo Bao away from his territory, so how could they have not paid an appropriate price for it? Whom are you calling a bastard? Rabbit, protested one. A kid and a rabbit glared at each other, neither giving in. However, Ao Jian's ability was really very strong. He himself had the battle prowess of 19 stars. This was too terrifying. His every move exuded the might sufficient to collapse mountains and destroy seas, so it was extremely difficult to defeat him, what more to kill him. Although Ling Han used all his mystical powers, he only managed to maintain a stalemate. Yet Ao Jian felt even more displeased internally. Last time, this human had not even had the courage to fight him, yet he now was actually able to fight him to a tie. Furthermore, the former still possessed a very great potential to develop further. So how could Ao Jian possibly accept that? He definitely had to kill this human. Otherwise, if he was allowed to reach the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier, who would be able to touch him in his nation's territory? Putting aside the question of killing him, even immortals that descended into the lower realm would be killed by him. Ao Jian burst out all his power and used the secret techniques of the dragon race one after the other, determined to kill Ling Han here. But this was even more of a fantasy. What kind of physique did Ling Han have? On par with godly metal. It was said that there existed an unbreachable gulf between immortal level and Shattering Void tier. So no matter how awesome Ao Jian was, he could not possibly injure Ling Han. Otherwise, he would have been able to turn the regulations of the immortal realm upside down. All the citizens of the world, give me more power! Ling Han raised his palm skywards and broadcasted the images of their battle to the sky above every city through the totem. Even if one was not in the city and farther away, he would still be able to see clearly. Lend me a helping hand. He aroused the hearts of the people, particularly targeting the middle state. The hearts of the people of the 4 regions were already united and had a strong sense of belonging to the great Ling Empire. But Ma Duo Bao had just forcefully brought the middle state under his authority, so the level of belonging the people felt to his state naturally could not compare with the situation in the 4 regions yet. This was a shortcoming, but was also something that had much room for improvement. However, after saying these words, the power of the nation he obtained became slightly stronger, yet was still not enough to support him to advance into 20 stars of Shattering Void tier. But Ao Jian immediately felt pressured, precisely because the difference of a single star meant a world of difference. Even if Ling Han had not yet achieved 20 stars of Shattering Void tier, he was still commanding the initiative, and there was a slight trend of Ao Jian becoming passive. Additionally, the more time passed, the more advantageous it would be to Ling Han. As the ruler of the great Ling Empire, he would gain the acceptance of more and more people of the middle state, which would in turn increase the power of the nation he could obtain. 9 colors, great grief spear, spear sweeps seeming tracks. Ao Jian shouted loudly, endless light condensing at the tip of his spear. There was a true dragon spiraling around, suddenly exuding endless might. It surged out towards Ling Han. Ao Jian delivered his strongest attack. Chapter 865 Pacification. Chapter 865 Pacification. To be honest, even if Ling Han did not dodge nor parry and chose to face it head-on, absolutely nothing would happen to him. However, before he was absolutely certain he could kill Ao Jian, he did not intend to expose the secret that his physique was as tough as godly metal. If Ao Jian found out about this, then would he still fight Ling Han? You got to be kidding. Faced with an opponent that was impossible to kill or even wound, who would still any have ideas of continuing the battle? Ling Han was waiting for a chance, or it could be said that he was creating a chance, to let Ao Jian assume that he had grasped Ling Han's weakness and deliver a fatal strike. From that, his own weakness would also be exposed, so Ling Han would be able to counter with an attack of his own. The two of them were equally matched. If you wouldn't give me a chance to hit you, how could I give that chance to you? For elites on their level, it was impossible that they would not reserve any power after every blow in order to leave a way out for themselves. Thus, even if an attack missed, they would still have strength remaining to parry or dodge. Ling Han wanted to let Ao Jian assume that his attack was capable of wounding him severely or even killing him. Only then would the latter not reserve any strength and burst out with his full power. Once that happened, after the strongest attack, his own defenses would hit rock bottom, and that would be the time for Ling Han to counterattack and kill him. Now, Ao Jian precisely thought that he had grasped this kind of chance. Ling Han did not reveal an obvious opening. This would be absolutely incapable of fooling a genius like Ao Jian, and he would easily see through the trap. Hence, only through his painstaking efforts did Ling Han manage to reveal a careless opening. Furthermore, after a series of attacks, he continuously enlarged this opening, giving Ao Jian a reason to deliver a strike with his full strength. The silver spear shattered the void. The true dragon roared. This was an extremely powerful blow. Even if it was Ma Duo Bao, he would only die with a grudge if he took this blow head-on. The strike landed. A pleased expression immediately appeared on Ao Jian's face. No matter how much of a monster you were, so what? Being hit by this strike of his, the only path would still be death. Pung! The spear tip stabbed into Ling Han's chest, and the true dragon wreaked havoc, wanting to penetrate Ling Han's chest and burst his heart. However, the fabric on Ling Han's chest had indeed been ripped, but his skin underneath was glowing with a jade-like brilliance, indestructible and undamaged. Fuck! What kind of physique was that? Ao Jian was instantly stunned. Was this guy really a human? Were you sure that you weren't a monster from the immortal realm? Take a strike from me as well. Ling Han took advantage of the opportunity to counterattack. His opponent had just delivered his strongest attack and was currently in the lapse period of his power and defenses. Although it was only for a single short instant, for Ling Han, an instant was enough. The Revere Life sword exuded endless brilliance and slashed out at Ao Jian's head. 10,000 techniques returned to one. Pooh! As the sword's light washed over, a human head shot upwards. Blood shot skywards from the beheaded body like a divine waterfall, shaking the space as if it wanted to incite the shattering of the heavens and earth. He's killed. When the 7 kings saw this, all of them felt Ma Duo Bao was avenged. This person actually wanted to whip the dead body of their ruler. This drove them into a mad rage, and now that Ao Jian was beheaded by Ling Han, they naturally felt excited and the depression in their hearts slightly soothed. He's not dead. Ling Han shook his head, his eyes gazing into the distance. How could that be? Isn't that his body? The 7 kings were all puzzled. This is only his shell, but his spirit has already departed from his body. Ling Han frowned. Normally, though the spirit could leave the body, that was only something an immortal could do. Additionally, it had to be a very powerful immortal that had cultivated his spirit to an incredibly sturdy extent, and was absolutely not something every immortal could do. Yet Ao Jian was undoubtedly just in the Shattering Void tier. Looks like this man should have obtained some kind of secret treasure, or perhaps some kind of godly medicine, which allowed his spirit to leave his body, Ling Han thought as he put the Revere Life sword away. Although Ao Jian's spirit had escaped, his physical body had been killed here, so it was not completely fruitless. "Your Majesty!" the 7 kings once again exclaimed in grief. Today was the day of great grief for the Purple Moon Empire. Their emperor had fallen, while the official name of their nation had withered away and would no longer exist. Ling Han sighed and said, "Don't bother about all that first. Let's make the funeral arrangements for Brother Ma." This gained the agreement of the 7 kings. It was natural for a dead person to be buried and at rest. Those that had come to attend the ritual became the people who would accompany Ma Duo Bao on his final journey. Every person was filled with tremendous respect for the great elite Ma Duo Bao was. He had fallen at the final step of splitting open the skies. His death had been for the sake of this whole realm. Otherwise, with Ma Duo Bao's capabilities, wouldn't it have been easy for him if he had wanted to defend himself? There would always be some people who could use their lives to fight for the sake of their dreams. The previous ruler had passed away, so a state funeral was naturally held. Moreover, he had died for the whole realm. The funeral lasted throughout a whole month. Furthermore, Ling Han personally delivered Ma Duo Bao's body into the core of the earth so that it would forever accompany the lower realm. There were still many matters to deal with afterwards. The handover of a nation was naturally not something that could be done with mere words. There were many details and trivial matters to be dealt with. Thankfully, though Helian Xuanxua was no longer here, he still had with him a veteran like the Rain Emperor, who managed to share much of the pressure on Ling Han. Meanwhile, Helian Tianyan once again entered the seas and began to recapture the 4 seas. Although Ao Jian had not fully died, he was only left with a spirit, even if he did appear again. So what? Would he be able to be a match for Helian Tianyan? One had to know that Helian Tianyan had had battle prowess of 20 stars of Shattering Void tier all those years ago, and his level in monstrosity was in no way inferior to Ma Duo Bao. Now that he had returned back to the Shattering Void tier, his power advanced rapidly, and it would definitely not be too long before he once again returned to the peak. Ling Han, on the other hand, worked hard at cultivation. The current him was not yet qualified to split open the skies. To be safe, he had to reach the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier. People were always forgetful. Ma Duo Bao had battled so fiercely at the time, but after half a year had passed, they were all living their own lives, and it was rare that people would speak again of this tragic figure. However, Ling Han and the 7 kings were naturally not going to forget him. They were all filled with eagerness to split open the skies, to become immortals, and to annihilate the 5 sects and the Ao clan. This was not something that could be achieved overnight, but none of them lacked patience or determination. Helian Tianyan once again swept the seas and united the 4 seas into one, which also became the territory of the Great Ling Empire. Now, it was really all land under the skies belonged to imperial authority. Ling Han could grasp the movements in every place in the world if he wanted to. He had now control over all the resources of the entire realm, and added with the Black Tower, his cultivation rate was naturally frighteningly quick. Of course, most importantly, it was also because he had experienced the Shattering Void tier once before in his reincarnation, which allowed him to attain the comprehension of the Shattering Void tier in advance, so there was not even a bit of bottleneck for him. After another half a year, Ling Han finally advanced into the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier. By now, he was only 22 years old. Throughout my journey, I have perfected my cultivation or even surpassed the limits, so my current strength has reached 10 stars. Ling Han estimated his own battle prowess. Even though he had managed to reach perfection for all the previous 9 tiers, and now he only needed to increase his battle prowess by a single star, One should know that the difference of a single star in shattering void tier meant a world of difference. This kind of improvement was incredibly amazing. If I use my full power, my conventional battle prowess would reach 20 stars. This was not Ling Han's limit, because he had just advanced into the 9th layer of the shattering void tier, and could still polish his cultivation and purify his origin power further in order to further increase his strength. Perhaps he might be able to reach 11 stars of shattering void tier. Then his standard battle prowess would be able to break through the limits of 20 stars of the shattering void tier. Chapter 866, Sovereign's Arrival upon Wind Moon Sect. Chapter 866, Sovereign's Arrival upon Wind Moon Sect. This was extremely amazing. Ma Duo Bao was so powerful, but his conventional battle prowess could only be 20 stars. Overcoming this limit in battle prowess was indeed terrifying beyond comparison. Helian Tianyan would also have an opportunity to reach battle prowess of 21 stars. Given that he had nurtured his second life from the true Dragon Fang, he ought to be even stronger. In that case, what if he was boosted with Power of the Nation? Ling Han condensed Power of the Nation, gathering its terrifying power, which pushed his power up to 20 stars of shattering void tier. This was the limit allowed by the lower realm and couldn't be upgraded anymore. This was the accumulation of the entire power of the nation of the 4 seas and the mainland. The limit of this power wouldn't just be 20 stars of shattering void tier. Other people would not have encountered this problem at all, because their bodies wouldn't be able to bear it and would explode into pieces before they could reach the ultimate power of 20 stars of shattering void tier. However, Ling Han's body had reached the level of godly metal and was still unable to accommodate all of it. Although the power wouldn't immediately come into effect within his own body, it was possible that before taking a strike, similar to how condensing spiritual chi of heaven and earth would enhance the power of that strike, his power would conversely be enhanced as well. 25 stars of shattering void tier. Ling Han wasn't sure. This kind of battle prowess was unprecedented, so there was nothing to reference. In short, he had to be stronger than Ma Duo Bao when he split open the sky, and definitely not by just a tiny bit. But my actual trump card is my physique. Ling Han thought to himself. When the time came for him to split open the sky, the ultimate elites of the immortal realm's 5 sects would definitely strike again. However, their attacks would be weakened by the powers of the realm, so what if they reached the level of 25 stars? He still could not be wounded. There's a little bit of progress with my cultivation of the 2nd layer of the indestructible heaven scroll. My spirit might not have been strengthened, but it has become more stable. Intending to kill me using the heart of martial arts is completely impossible. The indestructible heaven scroll was indeed very strange, the focal point being indestructible. The techniques of others would increase either their origin power or their brute force, but the 1st layer of his technique increased the strength of his physical body. The 2nd layer of his technique was also similarly increasing the stability of his spirit rather than letting it grow stronger. I heard that the immortals cultivate their spirits. If the spirits are placed outside the main body, they will be like another version of the self, yet could still evolve into a gold body as tall as thousands of meters and be millions of kilometers away in an instant. It is extremely amazing. Even though the indestructible heaven scroll can't strengthen the spirit, it can steadily promote its sense of security, just like the physique. The current me is strong enough to split open the sky. However, I must first resolve some issues passed down through history. Ling Han thought to himself that upon successfully splitting open the sky and having entered the immortal realm, there would be countless powerful forces coming over to compete for control of the lower realm. This, Ling Han would not be able to resist. Anyone else also wouldn't be able to resist and would have no other choice but to give in. According to Yi Shuang, the great forces of the immortal realm would not directly annex a small realm that came up by splitting open the sky, but would absorb it as a dependent country. Its sovereign couldn't hold his position to oversee the country, but needed to submit as hostage. Not satisfied, then you would be immediately sent to war at the realm's boundary. You would possibly be dead within minutes. In other words, after splitting open the sky, all living creatures of the lower realm could escape the fate of being refined into a realm pill and even get a better cultivation environment. However, the one who opened up the sky would lose his freedom and possibly become a country's sovereign in name only. However, Ling Han believed in himself shallow waters might be able to trap a true dragon for a while, but not forever. First, let's go to Wine Moon Sect 1. Ling Han did not bring anyone else. His figure unfolded and rushed toward the Wind Moon Sect. In the past, he had killed Hu Qingfang, the only son of Hu Jianyi, the sect leader of the Wind Moon Sect. He ended up being chased down by Hu Jianyi. Later, thanks to Feng Pian's assistance, Hu Jianyi had to back out. However, Ling Han said at the time that after his cultivation had reached the heaven tier, he would personally go to the Wind Moon Sect and uproot this evil sect. It was only that he had been busy cultivating so far. It was only now that he finally had some free time. His current speed was extremely fast, so fast that he had already arrived at the main gate of Wind Moon Sect one day later. From the outside, this sect did appear rather elegant, with white clouds lingering on the peaks, full of an ethereal atmosphere. Yet this was a place where evil people were sheltered and wrongdoing accepted, hiding unrivaled darkness. Ling Han raised his right hand, and the rock spirit leapt out of the black tower. He instructed calmly, "Tear it apart." The rock spirit immediately burst into a smile. Old Stone was really skilled in things like wreaking havoc. Pong, it rushed out and slammed on the main gate with a punch, directly blasting it out of the way. Suddenly, gravel flew everywhere, causing the disciples of the Wind Moon Sect, who were guarding the main gate, to curse incessantly. When they were hit by the gravel, the pain was so deep that they felt it in their bones. It was unbearably torturous. "Who are you? How dare you break into the Wind Moon Sect?" they reproved while crying in pain. They would be skinned alive by the sect's elites if they turned back without confirming the identity of the intruder. Of course, the rock spirit would not pay any attention to them. It brandished its long and thick arms, not even needing to smash, and a rising gale already turned those disciples of the Wind Moon Sect into bloody froth. It had already achieved the shattering void tier, and furthermore had reached the third layer thereof. Thus, such destructive power was nothing surprising. Ling Han walked with his hands crossed behind him as he headed into the mountains. "Who are Ah? Stop where Ah? Go and inform the sect's elites Ah." A lot of the Wind Moon Sect's disciples jumped out along the way, but they were all immediately smashed to death by the rock spirit. Even the strong were no exception. When an elite of the deity transformation tier was also smashed to death, no one dared to jump out anymore. They just looked at the rock spirit with a fearful gaze. Just what kind of existence was this? So inconceivably strong. "Kill all of them," Ling Han said coldly. Had it been any other party, he would have shown mercy and given them a way out. At the very least, he would not have killed all of them from top to bottom. However, the disciples of the Wind Moon Sect were an exception because they all practiced a harvest supplement technique. Their lifetime of cultivation had been built upon the sacrifice of countless human lives. Everyone had a way to kill. Rock Spirit faithfully executed the order, and its mind shrouded the entire Wind Moon Sect, not allowing anyone to escape. For a shattering void tier cultivator, doing this was just too easy. "Stop!" Hu Jianyi finally appeared. Clenching his teeth, he looked at Ling Han with eyes full of hatred and even more fear. It took only a few years for this young man to grow to the height that he could only look up to. He did know that Ling Han would one day surpass himself, but did not expect that this day would come so fast. "Stop! Whom are you giving orders to?" Ling Han said with indifference. The rock spirit only listened to the commands of Ling Han alone. Of course, it paid no heed to Hu Jianyi and kept smashing incessantly. No matter how far the disciples of the Wind Moon sect had hidden, it could still crush them to death using a punch from a distance. The gap in strength was really too large. If you do not stop, these women will be dead, Hu Jianyi said coldly as he pointed to a platform halfway up the mountain. Ling Han focused his gaze over in that direction and saw that there were hundreds of women sitting on the platform. They were all very young, but now there was a sharp blade placed against each of their necks, and behind them stood a murderous Wind Moon sect disciple. As long as you pledge not to make things difficult for the Wind Moon sect, I can also swear that this sect will properly practice a righteous path of cultivation from today. Hu Jianyi proposed. Chapter 867. Take me as your master. Chapter 867. Take me as your master. Ling Han couldn't help but burst out laughing, saying, "On what basis should I believe that a dog will change its asterisk? I've applied a secret technique on these women. Just by projecting my intention, their hearts will explode, causing their death. Furthermore, as long as my heart stops beating, they will suffer the same fate." Hu Jianyi sneered. "As the ruler of the great Ling Empire, can you bear those innocent people dying for your sake?" "No." Ling Han shook his head. Hu Jianyi immediately felt overjoyed and said, "Then quickly make an oath." "Whoever said that I will let you go?" Ling Han smiled. "You really are a shameless person. Don't think too highly of yourself." "Damn it." Hu Jianyi's eyes shot fire. "Are you making fun of me? I am a sect leader at the least. If worse comes to worst, I shall destroy everything. Anyway, there are so many beautiful ladies to accompany me, so at least I won't be lonely in the afterlife. I've already said in your dreams. Why are you still being so narcissistic?" Ling Han said smilingly, "Humph. Then I shall kill a few as a reminder to you." Hu Jianyi said menacingly. Since Ling Han became the sovereign of the Middle State, he had foreseen that a day like this would happen. Of course, he would not be resigned to wait for death, and thus had prepared for the present scene. So what if his act was despicable? As long as he could preserve his life, he would even do something that was more despicable by tenfold. Pooh! He felt a flash before his eyes, and then heard 2 heartbeats ringing in front of him. At first, he could only stare blankly. He didn't expect Ling Han to strike against him. Could the latter really disregard the lives of those women? But he then had another thought. Why would there be 2 heartbeats? Wasn't the other party just one person? He looked at Ling Han and saw the latter's hand holding a bloody red heart. The strange thing was that the heart was still beating. His chest felt so painful. Hu Jianyi lowered his head and was surprised to see that there was a bloody hole in his chest, where fresh blood was oozing out. Only then did he realize that the heart that Ling Han was holding in his hand was his. When did the other party claw out his heart? Incomprehensible thoughts flashed through Hu Jianyi's mind, but the fact was that his consciousness was becoming fuzzy. He had wanted to issue the order to kill, annihilating everyone and letting them be buried together with him in death. But this thought could not be projected out at all. In front of him, there was only Ling Han's chilly gaze. At the back of his mind, his consciousness, which was getting more and more blurry, slowly dissipated from his body, causing him to become a corpse. Ling Han came onto the platform with a quick step and unleashed his imposing aura. Pung! 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 Everyone was trembling all over, not even having the ability to move a finger. Ling Han's divine sense swept past. With APA, Pa, Pa, the disciples of the Wind Moon sect were killed as their hearts were crushed to pieces, while those captured women were released. A plan to hinder him using a method of the Heaven Tier. Ling Han summoned the guards in the nearby cities and let them escort these women back. This kind of trivial matter certainly wouldn't need to be taken on personally by the country's sovereign. He linked with the totem and placed the entire lower realm under his telepathic sense. He remained motionless and abruptly opened his eyes a day later. Found it. He immediately unfolded his body and flew to a place in the middle state. One day later, Ling Han came to a small town. Just a day ago, he had discovered through the totem that a member of the 1,000 Corpse sect was roaming here, and he was one of the general's corpse boss. Before entering the immortal realm, Ling Han had to completely eliminate the 1,000 Corpse sect. On the contrary, there was no news on the remaining members of the 5 great sects such as the Sword King and the others. It was unknown on which mountain or deep in which forest they were hiding. They would likely only appear when the immortals descended to the lower realm. Ling Han walked slowly, looking for traces of Corpse Boss. Without realizing, he came to a river. In front, there was a young man standing on a large rock, with his gaze fixed on the river. His facial expression was very interesting. One moment he was angry and the next disappointed. He looked to be just about 15 or 16 years old, but seemed to have met with huge setbacks in life. "Gonna jump?" Ling Han asked casually as he walked over. The clothing worn by the young man was of very high grade, but the fabric was old and had been washed to the point that their colors faded, turning spotlessly clean. It seemed that he had been wearing the same piece of clothing without any replacement. He turned around to look at Ling Han before immediately regaining his composure. "You can be assured, I won't jump. Based on your looks, it seemed that you will jump in any time," Ling Han said with a smile. "This has nothing to do with you, right?" the young man said indifferently. Ling Han was idle anyway, so he suggested, "Let's talk about it. What grievances have you encountered?" The young man cast him another glance. Naturally, he did not intend to have a heart-to-heart talk with a stranger, but he couldn't resist Ling Han, who had rich experiences in life. With just a few words that had struck home with him, he unconsciously opened up and started talking about it. "My name is Ding Ping, the first heir to the Ding family. I have been strong as an ox since young, and have been hailed as a genius and incessantly sought after by my clansmen. I also have a very beautiful fiancée. However, time slowly passed, yet my spirit base has yet to be awakened. It was only half a year ago that my spirit base had finally awakened, but it is a wilted spirit base with no way to cultivate. Now, my family members regard me as trash, and my fiancé terminated our marriage contract. I'm resentful, wondering why would the heavens do this to me. What I am even more dissatisfied with is that I have worked harder and put in more effort than anyone else in the past few years. Why am I still lacking compared to the others?" The young man felt extremely aggrieved. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "In this world, it has always been the case that success isn't achieved just based on efforts alone." Bang! This was a hit on the head. The young man was already upset to begin with. When he heard those words, he couldn't help but become so agitated that he wanted to bite someone. "However, if you don't work hard, then you definitely won't succeed." Ling Han turned his words around. He looked at Ding Ping and said, "Do you have a lot of strength?" Ding Ping could not help but reveal a little pride, saying, "Even those who have been cultivating for 4 to 5 years will not dare to compete with me in strength." This was quite amazing. One should have reached the 5th layer of the body refining tier after 4 to 5 years of cultivation, right? Ling Han couldn't help but became intrigued. He clearly didn't sense any strong bloodline from Ding Ping's body. He said, "Give me a demonstration." Ding Ping initially did not pay any heed to Ling Han. Did the latter not see him being depressed? But the words of Ling Han seemed to have supreme charisma, so much so that he couldn't help but do as requested. He jumped off the stone and lifted up with both hands the huge stone that was comparable to an ox. This stone was at least a few thousand kilograms. Ling Han was taken aback. If this young man had practiced body arts, then it wouldn't be unusual for him to lift such a large stone. But that didn't seem to be the case at all. Ling Han activated the Eye of Truth, sweeping over the young man's body with his eyes, and suddenly discovered wherein the strangeness lay. The skeletal structure of this young man was completely different from ordinary people's. Through the clever borrowing of power, it made him one of a kind. It was clear that he only had the strength of 4 tails, but could raise up heavy objects of thousands of kilograms in weight. Of course, this required the skeletal structure of this young man to be very sturdy. Otherwise, it would be crushed bit by bit under such weight. This could be seen from the streaks of patterns branded upon his bones. How many people would have been born with bone patterns? Ling Han couldn't help laughing and said, "Young man, take me as your master." Chapter 868, Tempered into Steel. Chapter 868, Tempered into Steel. Ding Ping put down the huge rock and looked at Ling Han with suspicion. This guy who was only older than him by a few years wanted to be his master? He said, "What can you teach me and what can I learn?" The first question was about Ling Han's ability, while the second was about Ding Ping's crippled spirit based any technique which he could learn exist. Ling Han's face broke into a smile. He then walked to the side of that huge rock, stretched out a hand and paw, easily lifted it up as if it wasn't a huge rock, but just a mass of cotton candy. Pooh! Ding Ping immediately widened his eyes and spew out the entire length of his tongue in shock. Although he couldn't cultivate, the strength of his brute force could in fact surpass that of most of the adults in town, but even he couldn't just lift up such a huge rock single-handedly. Ling Han casually tossed the huge rock up and down, it did so effortlessly. Indeed, had Ling Han not been fearful of scaring the kid, he could have lifted up an entire mountain. The current level of his physical strength had already stepped into that of the shattering void tier. Even without drawing strength from his origin power, his massive physical strength would strike other people speechless. Ding Ping couldn't help but be stupefied to think that the huge rock in hand was being tossed up and caught again as if it was a small pebble. He had to be seeing a ghost. "Watch carefully," Ling Han said with a smile while his right hand exerted a little force to toss, and shio, the huge rock shot straight into the sky like an artillery shell and became a tiny in a flash. Ding Ping's mouth was so big that he could have swallowed a whole human head, and there were stars flashing in both his eyes. Now, this was called power. In contrast, he was completely akin to a little baby who wasn't even qualified to be compared with Ling Han. So what if your spirit base is crippled? If the physical force is strong enough, it can crush everything. Ling Han said, paused, and stretched out his palm towards the sky. "Pa!" The falling boulder fell into his hand, and he then put it back onto the ground. Furthermore, it's not like the spirit base cannot be changed. "Master." Ding Ping, his mind being alert at the arrival of good fortune, immediately knelt down and bowed to Ling Han. Ling Han received the other party's observance of 3 kowtow's 9 salutations before helping the young man up. He said, "My surname is Ling, and given name is Han. You are my 5th apprentice." Ding Ping was a little surprised. Ling Han was older than him by only a few years, so how could he already have 4 apprentices? But then again, those capable were qualified to teach. Just the other party's action of tossing the huge rock was like a divine miracle to him. "I need to wait for a person here, and shall take you back to my country in a few days' time. However, since we are just idling anyway, let's first remold you thoroughly so as not to waste time," Ling Han said. Ding Ping couldn't help but feel excited. Remolding sounded like a sophisticated affair. Ling Han took out an alchemist's furnace and then a lot of medicinal herbs. Watching Ling Han bring out so many things out of thin air, Ding Ping could not help but be shocked. Is Master a god? It seemed like he had a treasure trove on hand. "Oh, you will know later." Ling Han smiled as he threw herbs into the furnace. He then grabbed Ding Ping before tossing him into the furnace as well, saying, Remolding can greatly enhance the toughness of your skin, bones, and flesh, making your physical strength and defense stronger. However, this process is also very painful. He paused and said, "You can give up at any time, but once you give up, you will no longer be my apprentice. My apprentice's aptitude can be less than precocious, but his will must be tenacious. Master, I shall endure it." Ding Ping said with a resolute gaze. He'd thought that he would be doomed to live his life as trash, but now that he saw hope, he would seize it no matter what. Would it be any more painful than the heartache caused by scornful looks that he had endured for the past 6 months? Now those really were sharp knives that gouged at him was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. Ling Han laughed. Treating Ding Ping like an alchemical concoction, he began refining. What was the current level of his strength, and how precious were the medicinal herbs used? This furnace was filled with medicinal herbs that would have made the eyes of any shattering void tear cultivator bloodshot with jealousy. One should know that there were actually many cultivators in this world, but how many of them had upgraded their physique up to level 10 precious metal? 2. They were precisely Ma Duo Bao and Hellian Tinyuneo Jian. A being of the immortal realm, didn't count. Also, if such refining was to be done daily, then it might just be possible to refine the physique of any ordinary person up to level 10 precious metal. But what would it require? Limitless treasured herbs, in addition to an alchemy emperor who had reached the 9th layer of the shattering void tier to personally undertake such a task. It could be said that, other than Ling Han, no one would have such a skill. Ah! Ding Ping soon let out a blood-curdling scream, like a pig being butchered. It hurt too much. However, the young man only shouted twice before he forcefully kept his mouth shut. He clenched his teeth tightly as blue veins started popping out on his forehead, and his entire body shivered uncontrollably. Nevertheless, he forced himself to bear with it. His cold sweat streamed, and pa, the bones in his entire body crackled noisily. This wasn't a simple matter of remolding, but also forging of bones. Forging of bones crushed the bones to remove impurities, then weld them back together and crush them again. This process would be repeated, treating the bones like cast iron to be tempered into steel. After a while, Ding Ping's mouth narrowed into a thin line, his nostrils were letting out sounds of deep breathing, and his eyes reflected the suffering endured with blood and tears. His lips were already torn from biting, but his gaze remained resolute. Good. Ling Han nodded internally. The young man's bone structure was different from ordinary people's. Furthermore, its extraordinary sturdiness made him the best candidate for cultivating body arts. However, just having natural endowment wasn't enough. In order to climb to the peak of martial arts, the most important thing was to have tenacious, willpower heart that never gave up. In this way, when you were in danger, you would think about how to get out of trouble and how to solve problems instead of waiting for death. It could even be said that people who were highly talented but possessed weak willpower might not necessarily reach the pinnacle of success. On the contrary, those who were less talented but had a strong will might be able to do so. Of course, it was the best to have both talent and strong will. Now that Ding Ping showed he had both talent and will, it made Ling Han very pleased. This refining process took 1 day and 1 night. During this period, the Ding clan actually did not come looking for Ding Ping. It could be seen that this young man who was once regarded as the rising star of the Ding clan had been completely abandoned. Ling Han opened up the furnace, lifted out Ding Ping, and said, "Follow my lead. I will pass on to you a technique to cultivate body arts." 9 dragons, tyrant body art. Ding Ping was finally freed from living hell, and immediately found out how great his progress. Wash was full of strength, feeling as if he could smash a tall mountain to pieces with a single punch. He quickly said yes. Through a session of drill and practice, Ling Han carefully explained the mnemonic chant. Some parts could not be expressed in words, so he directly pointed out a finger and taught Ding Ping using telepathy. How could a cultivator who had reached the 9th layer of the shattering void tier not have such ability? Even the 8 kings could pass on their mystical powers. What more Ling Han? Ding Ping acted in accordance to the law, but after a while his stomach was making a noise like thunder. He couldn't help but turn red in the face, looking somewhat sheepish. He was hungry. Chapter 869. 2 Different Worlds. Chapter 869. 2 Different Worlds. To have gotten hungry was only normal. The source of energy for refining the body was the food one consumed. Ding Ping had not eaten all day and night. In addition, now that he had started cultivated a body art, he naturally would have gotten hungry immediately. Ling Han burst out laughing and said, "Let's eat first." He took out ingredients from the Black Tower and proceeded to cook them. Soon, a fragrant aroma wafted throughout the entire place. Ding Ping could not help but drool. After allowing himself to take a bite, he could not stop eating. Looking at him happily chowing down the meat piece by piece, Ling Han could not help but think of Hunyo. I wonder if that little girl is doing well in the immortal realm? She shouldn't be eating less meat, right? When the time came for him to meet Hunyo again, the other party should no longer be a little girl, but rather an elegant young woman. A girl changes 18 times before reaching womanhood one. Would the little girl no longer like an uncle like him? Ling Han was immersed in his own thoughts for a while before starting to eat. His splitting open the sky was imminent. As long as he entered the immortal realm, he would then be under the same starry sky as his familiar day would come when he reunited with them. At this moment, Ding Ping felt a little strange such delicious food. Yet Master was distracted. He truly deserved to be called Master. He probably had eaten such food too many times before, and already grew tired of it. After eating, Ding Ping only felt that his whole body was full of strength. He then practiced the 9 dragons tyrant body art, and after briefly completing a single practice session, went to lift the huge rock again. To his astonishment, he found that his strength had increased by more than 10-fold. It had been just one day. Moreover, much of the upgrade wasn't simply just brute strength, but things like the toughness and durability of his skin and bones. These were invisible from the outside. Ling Han nodded, saying, "Currently your body cultivation has almost the strength of the 3rd layer, but given your extremely bizarre skeletal structure, you can unleash 100-fold power. Hence, your explosive power is comparable to the condensed origin power of that layer. Go home and have a good rest, and come back here every afternoon. When it's time to leave for good, I will naturally bring you along." With a respectful expression, Ding Ping bowed and said, "Yes, Master." He was filled with joy from the bottom of his heart. He had initially thought that he had become a cripple. Never did he expect that he would push open another door of opportunity now. 9 dragons tyrant body art. Upon major accomplishment, one would possess the true power of 9 dragons. How powerful would that be? He couldn't wait to go back to his clan and take a look at the smug faces of those people. He naturally had full reverence for Ling Han. After spending a brief period of one day together, he realized that his master's power was beyond imagination. Ling Han stayed by the river, waiting for the reappearance of Corpse Boss. He connected with the totem through divine sense, which allowed him to have a panoramic view of every corner of the small town. He wanted to test the nature of Ding Ping's heart. Having talent and will just proved that Ding Ping had potential to become an elite. However, this elite might be a good person or a bad person. Ling Han didn't want to nurture a monstrous devil with his own hands. Therefore, letting Ding Ping go back this time was a test of his temperament. Suddenly experiencing an exponential increase in strength and being regarded as a genius again, would he be able to guard his heart? Ding Ping returned to the town and came upon the Ding clan residence. He entered the manor in an upright and assertive manner. "Young master." The 2 guards at the door greeted him, yet their faces displayed derision, not showing even the slightest bit of respect. Everyone knew that Ding Ping had finally awakened his spirit base 6 months ago, but it was crippled, which meant he could not cultivate at all. Nowadays, what was the use of having just massive brute strength? The clan's elders had been discussing this matter for quite a while. The conclusion would be out in the next few days, and the position of Ding Ping as the clan's first heir would be abolished since there were so many of the Ding clan's younger generation to choose from. A plucked phoenix is not as good as a chicken. Was there still a need to show reverence too? Ding Ping's gaze swept across them. He harumphed, saying, "What is with your attitude?" "What attitude?" a guard asked in bewilderment. "Young Master Ding, what kind of attitude do you need us to have? In a few days' time, your position will become lower than that of a servant. So do take advantage of these few days and enjoy your last bit of glory as young Master Ding." Insolence! Ding Ping raised his hand and paw gave him a slap in the face. That guard was just at the level of the body refining tier. How much could he block? Abruptly, he had been given a solid thrashing. Holding his face with one hand, he couldn't help but point his halberd at Ding Ping, saying, "You dare to hit me? And why not? As long as I am the young master of the Ding clan, I have the right to teach you how to be a servant." Ding Ping said coldly, "Haha, Brother Ping sure is impressive." At this moment, a youngster came out from the manor. Ding Feiwen. Ding Ping's gaze swept across him and suddenly blazed with fire. Half a year ago, this clansman of his was still calling him Big Brother Ding, while going circles around him and bootlicking. However, once he discovered that Ding Ping had a crippled spirit base, his attitude immediately took a 180-degree turn. Not only did he completely lose his respect for Ding Ping, he also disparaged the latter incessantly. A vile character through and through. Ha ha ha. Ding Feiwen laughed loudly. He was not alone. Beside him, there was a beautiful young maiden about 14 or 15 years old. Her body had already developed quite well, with very distinct contours and undulations. She was extremely alluring. Yuan. Ding Ping couldn't help blurting out her name once he caught a glimpse of the young maiden. At this moment, the little beauty bore a cold expression, saying, "Young Master Ding, we have terminated the engagement. Please don't call out my name so intimately. It will cause other people to misunderstand." Her name was Yi Yuan, and she was once Ding Ping's fiancée. However, half a year ago, when she learnt that Ding Ping had a crippled spirit base, the Yi clan proceeded to terminate their engagement immediately. What a joke! Although the Yi clan's power wasn't on par with the Ding clan's, they would never allow the pearl of the clan to be betrothed to a piece of trash. Moreover, Yi Yuan's martial arts talent was quite amazing, and she was likely to have a promising future. Ding Ping couldn't help but felt incomparable pain in his heart. He sincerely liked Yi Yuan, and the other party had reciprocated his affection and been extremely gentle to him. However, since their engagement had been terminated 6 months ago, they had never seen each other again. Before, he had thought that Yi Yuan was put under house arrest by her family. It was only now that he realized that the other party's gentleness towards him in the past had all been mere pretense. This cut through his heart like a knife. "Yeah, Brother Ping, please don't simply call out her name, as Yuan is now my fiancée," Ding Feiwen added. Seeing that Ding Ping's face had turned pale as if he had been hit with a heavy punch, he could not help but feel gratified. He used to be suppressed by Ding Ping. No matter how outstanding his achievements were, when compared to Ding Ping, he would be seen as ordinary. However, he had a scheming nature. Even though he hated Ding Ping, he still played the role of a younger brother in front of the other party because he valued power and influence more than arrogance and self-esteem. But now, Ding Ping had lost his position, while he had been chosen to replace him. Naturally, he no longer had to keep up with the pretense, and could exhibit his fervor as well as ruthlessly strike against the person who used to tread above him. His face pale, Ding Ping cried out, Yuan. He genuinely liked Yi Yuan. However, the Yi Yuan in front of him now was completely irreconcilable with the person in his memory. There wasn't any similarity in the slightest. There were other two youngsters behind, and they immediately jumped out and shouted at Ding Ping, "How dare you! The name of Brother Feiwen's fiancé isn't one you can simply call." Chapter 870, Collapsing with a Single Punch. Chapter 870, Collapsing with a Single Punch. Ding Ping's gaze swept across those two people. One was called Ding Yuxuan, while the other was Ding Xingwei. They used to be his own lackeys. If he had asked them to go east, they wouldn't dare to go west. But now, each one of them was shameless and arrogant, not having any respect for him in the least. In truth, Ding Ping also knew that he had a crippled spirit base, and therefore could not have continued to hold the position of the Ding clan's young master. He wouldn't have found it to be unacceptable should the clan request that he abdicate the position. But the vile expressions on these people's faces, turning against him so swiftly, caused him to feel bitterly disappointed. All of them belonged to the same clan. Did they need to be so cold and cynical? Right, I forgot to tell you a piece of good news. Ding Feiwen laughed happily. A few days ago, I went to the Crimson Sun sect to become a disciple, and I have already been accepted. To be labeled a sect, this illustrated that they ought to have at least obtained the backing of an elite of the spiritual infant tier. Yet what was the power of the Ding clan? Only the spiritual ocean tier. This was just too wide of a gap. Therefore, Ding Feiwen being able to join the Crimson Sun sect was great news for the Ding clan, no less than having one's daughter marry into royalty and become the imperial consort. It was no wonder that the Yi clan would act so quickly, betrothing Yi Yuan to Ding Feiwen. This was truly a powerful son-in-law. What would Ding Feiwen's cultivation level be when he came out of the Crimson Sun sect in the future? The spiritual ocean tier at the very least, possibly stepping into the spiritual pedestal tier, or even the flower blossom tier. He would be invincible within White Water Town. Brother Feiwen, you are so awesome. Yi Yuan aptly expressed her admiration at that moment, resulting in Ding Feiwen having a great sense of satisfaction. Ding Ping observed all of this with his own eyes. His heart had already calmed down. At this moment, he suddenly let it go as he had it all figured out. Yi Yuan had never really loved him. She was only eyeing his position of Ding clan's young master and the potential that his clan had once held in high regard. Meanwhile, he himself had liked not the true Yi Yuan, but the gentleness which she had shown him under her pretense. This being the case, then why should he be sad? For the sake of a woman who didn't like him in the first place, was it worthwhile? Why bother with these people? They were just living in a pond, without any idea of the vastness of the rivers and seas. Although Ling Han did not explicitly reveal his identity, Ding Ping could guess that the position of this new master of his was indeed extremely high. No one could match the dominance expressed within his every movement. One only needed to refer to the method used by Ling Han, previous lion, just a short span of one day. It had allowed Ding Ping to be reborn, with his current strength comparable to the first layer of the element gathering tier. Revealing this would surely scare his clan members to death. Furthermore, the 9 Dragons Tyrant Body art would allow him to possess the true power of 9 true dragons upon perfection, which was even more amazing. In comparison, how could the position of Ding clan's young master compare? And what of being a disciple of the Crimson Sun sect? In the midst of his thoughts, Ding Ping's mindset suddenly changed and his temperament matured. He was no longer angry. The other party might not have regarded him as a clansman, but he still remembered their previous relations. He said softly, "Please let me pass. I would like to go in and rest." Pooh, ha ha ha. Both Ding Yuxuan and Ding Xingwei burst into laughter. Admitting defeat so soon? You are still Ding clan's young master. As long as your title hasn't been taken away, you are still the leader of Ding clan's younger generation. The corner of Yi Yuan's lips also revealed a careless sneer. Fortunately, she had found out about him earlier. Otherwise, wouldn't she have regretted it for a lifetime if she had gotten married to him? Ding Feiwen laughed loudly. He felt it wasn't good enough to step on this person whom he had always looked up to in the past if the latter didn't have the slightest bit of arrogance. He separated his legs slightly and said, "Sure, you can crawl through here below me. Afterwards, I won't bully you any more." Hee. Ding Yuxuan and the others were snickering, and even the two guards were also blatantly gloating. All of them were mocking him. Ding Ping looked at them with indifference. He said, "Don't block my way, otherwise you will regret it." "Oh, I would like to see how you're going to make me regret it," Ding Feiwen said loftily. Ding Ping strode forward with his fists clenched tightly. "If you intend to pass through forcefully, then you have really overestimated yourself." Ding Feiwen snorted. He had awakened his spirit base 3 years ago, and presently his cultivation level was that of the 9th layer of the body refining tier. If it hadn't been that the barrier to the 1st layer of the element gathering was too difficult to break through, he was sure that he would have already stepped over it. But this wouldn't be a problem. As long as he entered the Crimson Sun sect, the sect's upper echelons would be able to give him pointers, and coupled with the provision of resources from the sect, the time for him to break through to the 1st layer of the element gathering tier was definitely close at hand. "Move!" Ding Ping was already approaching him. "Are you even a match for me?" Ding Feiwen made the first move, attacking with both his palms. He knew that Ding Ping had a bizarre strength from an early age, so he shouldn't underestimate the latter's battle prowess, which was equivalent to the 5th layer of the body refining tier. But it was only just that. He only didn't want to be directly hit by the other party. When it came to a real fight, his strength of the 9th layer of the body refining tier would surely crush the other party. "Huh!" Ding Ping punched out, fast and heavy. Pung! Ding Feiwen's palms were forcibly separated by the attack, which was like a hot knife through butter as the punch slammed into his face. His muscles were suddenly undulating like water ripples, and his whole body was sent flying backwards. He severely smashed into the wall and rebounded. He was in so much pain that he wasn't able to get up for a while. What was going on here? Yi Yuan, Ding Yuxuan, Ding Xingwei, and the two guards were all stunned. How was this possible? That was Ding Feiwen, a person whose cultivation level was that of the 9th layer of the body refining tier, the strongest person among the younger generation of the Ding clan. Even though Ding Ping had a strange ability, he had already been surpassed in strength by Ding Feiwen 2 years ago. However, the clan had been optimistic about his potential, and therefore had allowed him to retain the position of young master. It was truly unexpected that Ding Feiwen would be defeated with a single punch. Yi Yuan rounded her beautiful eyes in amazement. Could it be that the other party had been hiding his strength all along? Otherwise, how could he have defeated Ding Feiwen with a single punch, even if Ding Feiwen had been careless or had not gone all out in the attack earlier? Ding Ping retracted his fists and left with large strides as if nothing had happened. Only he himself knew how emotionally stirred up his whole being was. This punch he had been enduring for half a year, and today he finally lashed out. Launching a punch was easy, but to bring about such an effect had been too difficult. "Master!" Ding Ping cried out inwardly as if he was addressing a god, full of reverence. The attitude of his clan caused him to feel bitterly disappointed. Now he only had one thought in mind, which was to wait for Ling Han to finish his affairs and take him away from this cold-hearted place. His parents and grandparents had passed away early. Although he had 2 uncles, they had basically ignored him for 6 months now. Brother Feiwen. After waiting for Ding Ping to walk far away, Yi Yuan and the others went to help Ding Feiwen get up. "That bastard actually dared to launch a sneak attack on me. I am going to lodge a complaint to the clan's elders and have them use the clan's rules to punish that bastard," Ding Feiwen said through gritted teeth, his face filled with embarrassment. Sneak attack. Ding Yuxuan and Ding Xingwei promptly nodded their heads in affirmation. That's right. That bastard must have attacked Brother Feywin sneakily. Otherwise, how could he have defeated Brother Feywin with a single punch? Ding Feywin immediately glared at the two they actually dared to mention his defeat. A glint flashed in Yi Yuan's beautiful eyes. She had to go home immediately to report this matter. Chapter 871 Misunderstanding. Chapter 871 Misunderstanding. Far away, Ling Han could not help but smile and murmured, "Then let's just have things become slightly livelier." Through the totem, he issued a few commands. If C girl knew that I was making trouble like this, she would definitely say that I, an emperor, am ignoring my proper duties again, right? Ling Han gazed at the skies, filled with even more longing for his family, parents, son, and beauties. Who knew how they were now? Back to the topic, Ding Feywin immediately raced to complain to the elites of the clan. Naturally, in his words, Ding Ping was despicable and shameless, and had used shameful means to plot against him. He was requesting the elites of the clan to act according to the clan rules and punish Ding Ping harshly. This, of course, enraged the elites of the clan. This Ding Ping was really inconsiderate. Just because his status of the young master of the clan had not yet been abolished, he actually dared to look down on the rules of the clan. "Call Ding Ping over immediately!" one of the elites yelled, obviously extremely displeased. Yes. Ding Ping had just returned to his room, had a bath, and changed into a clean set of clothes, which was also his only other remaining set of clothes, and had not yet sat down firmly when he was summoned to meet the elites of the clan. He knew that Ding Feywin had to have told tales. However, he had a clear conscience, and followed without hesitation. The two wound here and there, and very soon arrived at the conference hall of the clan. This was the place where the clan would confer on important matters, and also the place where punishments or rewards would be given. "Greetings, patriarch and elders." Ding Ping was not arrogant, and paid his greetings to all the elites in the hall, then stood somberly, his hands at rest on either side of him. "Ding Ping, do you know the error of your ways?" one of the elders asked. Ding Ping shook his head and answered no. "Insolence!" another elder suddenly shouted. "You employed a devious scheme to injure Ding Feywin, and you still have no intention to reflect on your actions." In reply to seventh elder, I had not used any devious scheme. Instead, I had defeated him upright and frankly. If the elders do not believe me, I can fight Ding Feywin again. Ding Ping said, "Nonsense." An elder shook his head resolutely. How could he possibly believe that Ding Ping had a chance of defeating Ding Feywin? This, naturally, was the former's deliberate duplicity of the matter. There is no need to consider again. I announce that Ding Ping's status as the first heir of the clan will be abolished from this day onwards. The Ding clan patriarch said. Half a year ago, they had already considered this issue. However, when they recalled that Ding Ping's parents and grandparents had all sacrificed themselves for the sake of the clan, they had not immediately agreed on this matter. But Ding Ping's actions today had exceeded the limits tolerated by the clan, which angered them. Now they no longer hesitated. Ding Ping had long expected this. This did not cause him any emotional upheaval. However, the fact that the clan only listened to Ding Feywin's one-sided story made him feel very wronged and angered. This was too unjust. "I am dissatisfied," he called out. "Dissatisfied? This is not up to you to decide." Seventh elder said, "Do you think that you are still qualified to be in the position of the first heir of the clan?" Ding Ping said, "I'm not dissatisfied about that, but instead the fact that you all should not just listen to Ding Feywin's one-sided story. You think that we should believe that you can defeat Feywin with your own power?" Fourth elder could not help but burst out laughing. This was a colossal joke. Ding Ping did indeed have some brute force, but he would only be a match for an opponent in the 5th or 6th layer of the body refining tier at most. How could it be that he would be able to match Ding Feiwen? Why wouldn't you believe? Ding Ping retorted. He was still filled with youthful vigor. Let him come. I want to have a battle with him. Insolence, Fourth Elder reproved. Step down quickly. Someone, give Ding Ping 300 strikes of the staff as a warning to others. I am dissatisfied. I am dissatisfied. I am dissatisfied. Ding Ping exclaimed, his head high. In this moment, he really wished that he had supreme power so he could suppress everyone else and force them to listen to his words. It is a decision of the clan. Who are you to express your dissatisfaction? Third Elder humphed and said, Take him away quickly. Report. It was at this moment that a man rushed in. What caused you to be so flustered? Do you not know that we are having a clan meeting? Third Elder asked in displeasure. In reply to the Patriarch and all the elders, Lord City Master is here, the servant replied. Shwa, shwa, shwa. The Patriarch of the Ding clan and all the elders stood up. The Lord City Master was an extremely noble, highly placed figure, an existence that they could only look up to. One had to know that even the strongest elite in the Ding clan was only in the spiritual ocean tier. And what about Lord City Master? He was an elite in the flower blossom tier. Quick, go and receive him. How could the Patriarch of the Ding clan still remain seated? He hurriedly led all the elders out to receive this great personage. What character was this Lord City Master? Why would he arrive personally so suddenly? Would this bring good fortune or trouble to the Ding clan? They all stepped out to receive him, and saw a tall man standing at the doors of the clan residence. He looked to be only in his 40s, but was exuding a frighteningly powerful aura, which almost made them feel like they were about to be blinded by his brilliance. For them, the flower blossom tier could be considered gods. They were able to fly and flee through the ground, had a lifespan of about 300 years, and were much, much too different from nobodies like them. How could they possibly be worth someone like that to personally come and pay them a visit? Greetings, Lord City Master. They all quickly knelt, incredibly respectful. The City Master had the surname Liu, with the given name of Jinshi. He had immediately broke into a run to rush over here right after receiving Ling Han's sound transmission through the totem, and had not even managed to bring a single attendant with him. He laughed shortly, stretched out his arms to help them up, and said, The Ding clan has a great celebration, and I have especially come to offer my congratulations. Great celebration? Where? All the members of the Ding clan were at a loss. Why were they completely clueless about this matter? Could it be that you all still do not know yet? That an outstanding genius of your esteemed clan has been taken as disciple by a great figure? Lu Jinshi asked, smiling. What? Everyone of the Ding clan was stunned. Someone who could be called a great figure by the Lord City Master. How highly placed and noble was a person like that? Spiritual infantier? That was right. Wasn't Ding Feiwen just taken as disciple by the Crimson Sun sect? This damn brat, he had obviously been taken as disciple by an elite of the spiritual infantier, yet merely said that he had become a disciple of the Crimson Sun sect. Really, how could he be so modest? At times when he should be proud, he really should be proud. The members of the Ding clan all thought that they had understood, and all of them smiled in pleasure. Sees, even the Lord City Master came over personally to offer congratulations. The Ding clan was going to become great and soar high. Quick, go and summon Feiwen here, the Patriarch of the Ding clan hurriedly said. In a short while, Ding Feiwen had arrived. However, because he had suffered a punch from Ding Ping, there was a black circle around the side of his eye, which caused his image to greatly drop. This sight caused the muscles on Lu Jinshi's cheek to twitch. A disciple taken by that lord, why would he have such conduct? However, because the Ding clan had gladly invited this person out, he naturally held no doubts, and quickly said smilingly, Young Master Ding, congratulations. To be taken as disciple by that lord. Please take care of me in future. Ding Feiwen was baffled. The elders of the clan were pandering too much, and even the noble Lord City Master lowered his own status, treating him like some important figure. What was going on? He had indeed entered the Crimson Sun sect, but had not been favored by any great figure. Could it be that there was an amazing turn of events in the script? Chapter 872, My Master, Ling Han. Chapter 872, My Master, Ling Han. All the important people of the clan were offering their congratulations, and so was the Lord City Master, which caused Ding Feiwen to become so smug and conceited that he was practically about to forget his own name. That should be the case, right? He had gained the favor of some major figure of the Crimson Sun sect, and had been taken as disciple, just that he had yet to get the news. Ho, that must be it. Fuck, Ding Ping, that bastard, actually dared to give me a punch. I'm definitely going to make him pay dearly for it this time. Lord City Master, this way, please, the patriarch of the Ding clan hurriedly said. This was no place for conversation. Please. Please. They all moved to the main hall and sat in the respective seats for hosts and guests. Because Lu Jinsher's status was much too high, they still felt ill at ease, even though he had been offered the high seat of the host, fearing that they would have treated this noble guest too lightly. Lord Patriarch, elders. Ding Feiwen smirked as he looked at Ding Ping. How do you plan on dealing with this person? We have already come to a decision. We shall abolish his status as the first heir of the clan, and will give him a harsh punishment with 300 heavy strikes of the staff, the patriarch of the Ding clan said, although Ding Feiwen's tone had suddenly become lofty and proud, which caused him slight displeasure when he recalled that even the Lord City Master humbled himself. What right did he have to complain? Such a light punishment. Ding Feiwen's self-satisfaction was close to exploding. Even the Lord City Master acted like he would do anything as long as there was a word from him. So what need was there for him to continue to take the elites of the clan to heart? I am an actual true disciple of the Crimson Sun sect. However arrogant, however tyrannical he acted, it would be accepted as natural. Then, according to Feiwen, how should we deal with him? The patriarch of the Ding clan asked, slightly displeased, though he did not dare to express his dissatisfaction. He was certain that if he dared to present a poor attitude to Ding Feiwen, Lu Jinsher would dare move against him. Lord City Master was an elite of flower blossom tier. What would he dare not do? Cripple both his arms. Ding Feiwen declared icily. He actually dared beat him, so how could he vent his anger without crippling Ding Ping's arms? Report. Right at this moment, another servant entered, knelt, and announced, the patriarch of the Yi clan seeks an audience. Yi clan. Yuan is here. Ding Feiwen could not help but break into a grin. Let them in. Yi Yuan had come just on time. She could clearly see how impressive and amazing he was now. Furthermore, with Yi Yuan watching from the side, this would give Ding Ping the greatest blow. That servant would naturally not obey Ding Feiwen's command, and immediately turned to look at the patriarch of the Ding clan. The patriarch of the Ding clan was even more displeased. Who was calling the shots in the Ding clan now? Even if you, Ding Feiwen, would be a great elite in the future, that was only something that would happen in the future. His expression black, he humphed before commanding, invite them in. In a short while, the servant led 3 people in, 2 men and a woman. The 2 men were the patriarch and the first elder of the Yi clan, whereas the woman was naturally Yi Yuan. Yuan, you're here. Ding Feiwen said, smiling. He was completely acting like he was the patriarch of the Ding clan, and said, Come, let me introduce to you. This is the City Master, Lord Lu. City Master. The 3 members of the Yi clan all looked stunned. Lord City Master? What noble, prestigious person was that? But looking at the attitude of Ding Feiwen, He seemed capable of being on equal stand with the Lord City Master. That was too awesome, wasn't it? Brother Feywin, why has Lord City Master come? Yi Yuan asked in a whisper. Ding Feywin was feeling particularly pleased with himself, and said, I have been taken as true disciple by a great figure of the Crimson Sun sect, and thus even Lord City Master himself has personally come to offer his congratulations. He deliberately leaned close to Yi Yuan and lowered his voice as if putting up a pretense of profound mystery. The Yi clan naturally knew that the Lord City Master had come, and thus the Patriarch and First Elder had come personally, wanting to get to the bottom of this matter. Even so, Yi Yuan was still stunned, and said, Then I truly congratulate you, Brother Feywin. When she saw Ding Ping's punch previously, she had thought that this might be related to him, but now she had completely tossed this idea aside. Now that she thought about it, it was funny. That person had a crippled spirit base, and his achievements in this lifetime were already destined. Ding Feywin was feeling particularly pleased. He looked coldly at Ding Ping and said, Come, take him away quickly and break his arms. He had directly exceeded his authority, acting like he was the Patriarch. Report. It was really lively today. Again, a servant had entered, informing Patriarch the sect master of the Crimson Sun sect has come to visit. Even his voice was trembling. The sect master of the Crimson Sun sect. What great elite was that? He was a few hundred times stronger than even the Lord City Master. The elites of the Ding clan all looked at each other, slightly confused. Even if Ding Feywin had been taken in as disciple by that great elite of the spiritual infant tier from the Crimson Sun sect, there was still no need for the sect master himself to make a personal visit, right? What was going on here? So Lord Jia has also gotten the news. Only Lu Jinsher understood. That great lord had taken in a disciple, so putting aside the personal visit of the sect master of the Crimson Sun sect, even if even more powerful figures came, that would not be the slightest bit strange. However, he was a bit confused. This Ding Feywin, at best, could only be called talented. Furthermore, his temperament was really not all too impressive. Why would he have been chosen by that great lord? But Ling Han had clearly said that he was to go to the Ding clan to offer his congratulations. Could it be that the members of the Ding clan had made some kind of mistake here? Everyone hurriedly went out to receive the other newcomer. The sect master of the Crimson Sun sect had the surname of Jia, with the given name of Wu. He had a long-established reputation, and was the greatest elite in this area. When one mentioned this lord, everyone would be filled with heartfelt reverence. Greetings, Lord Jia! Everyone knelt and paid their greetings to this great elite. Jia Wu raised his hands with a smile and asked, Who is the disciple of that lord? Hearing his words, the members of the Ding clan were all at a loss, and practically at the same time they asked, What lord? They had all thought that Ding Feywin had been taken as disciple by some great elite of the Crimson Sun sect, which was why Lu Jinsher had come to offer his congratulations. But now that Jia Wu had come, there seemed to be something strange going on here. What more when the latter had even used an astonishing form of address? That lord! Hiss, that lord! Even Jia Wu had to address him as lord. So what kind of person would that be? The members of the Ding clan were all trembling. Things were becoming strange, and did not seem to be as they had imagined. Ding Ping suddenly opened his mouth and asked, May I ask, is that lord's surname Ling? Silence! What right do you have to speak here? Seventh Elder immediately rebuked him. Couldn't he see that they were feeling troubled here? Yet Jia Wu and Lu Jinsher both raised their brows at the same time, turned to look at Ding Ping, nodded, and replied, Precisely! *T, what's this situation? None of them were idiots, and a guess appeared inside their hearts. Furthermore, this guess caused great emotional waves inside their hearts. My master's surname is Ling, and his given name is Han, Ding Ping said. He was finally certain that these two people had come for his sake. Strictly speaking, they had come for Ling Han. "Greetings, young master." Jia Wu and Lu Jinshi both went down on bent knee, their expressions respectful. "What?" All the members of the Ding clan were so stunned there was a shiver running up their spines. That was the Lord City Master, and there was another person who was even the sect master of the Crimson Sun sect. These two, in their eyes, were God's beings that could bear the weight even if the sky collapsed. But these two people actually now half knelt in front of Ding Ping to pay their respects and called him young master. Heavens, what kind of fucking good fortune had hit Ding Ping that he had taken some great lord as his master. Pa, Ding Feiwen, meanwhile, slumped down onto the ground, his face ashen. Chapter 873, The Harder You Fall. Chapter 873, The Harder You Fall. Ding Feiwen experienced a full-body shiver. How could this be? How was this possible? Wasn't Ding Ping just a piece of trash that only had some brute strength? On what basis did he manage to obtain the favor of a figure so lofty that even such ultimate elites like Jia Wu would have to kneel down to pay their respects to? Even Jia Wu was so what was a mere disciple of the Crimson Sun sect worth? Ling Han? This name seems kind of familiar. Someone mumbled. That's right. Feels like I heard it before somewhere. Should be an elite, right? Of course, if he's not an elite, why would Lord Jie show such great respect? Everyone was discussing in low voice. This scene was really too shocking, and also spurred much curiosity amongst the spectators. Who on earth was this Ling Han? Jia Wu stood humphed and said, "Insolence, to dare to rashly discuss the emperor. Do you all want to die?" All of a sudden, complete silence descended. The emperor? That was right. Didn't the current emperor precisely have the surname of Ling with the given name of Han? When one spoke of this emperor, who would not willingly proclaim their submission, he was the one who had united the Middle State and the Four Regions, and had even absorbed the Four Seas into his territory, was the first in all of history. Ding Ping had actually been taken under the wing of the emperor. Fuck! Yi Yuan's beautiful eyes immediately shone. This was a real wealthy husband. If she could marry Ding Ping, how high would the status she could attain be? Did you not see how even Jia Wu wanted to kneel to pay his respects? Putting aside the others, even Ding Ping had a scare. He had only guessed that Ling Han had to have a formidable background. But no matter what, he would not have guessed that the latter was the emperor of the great Ling Empire. This was too unimaginable. The greatest person in this world actually came to a small place like theirs here. You may dispense with the courtesies, sirs. Ding Ping kept up an appearance of being unperturbed, as he thought he definitely could not allow his master's name to be tarnished. Thank you, young master. Jia Wu and Lu Jinshi both replied respectfully, although they could not see what was special about Ding Ping, merely in terms of conduct. Ding Ping was better than Ding Feiwen by who knew how many times. Indeed, this was the real one they sought. The other members of the Ding clan finally came to realize that Ding Ping this time had really become so impressive and awesome that his awesomeness level had spiked sky high. Quick, quick, quick! We have to quickly amend the mistakes we made earlier as soon as possible. Ding Feiwen, do you know your crime? The patriarch of the Ding clan immediately shouted and looked darkly at Ding Feiwen. This brat actually dared to boss him around just now. If you really were the disciple of a great elite of the Crimson Sun sect, he would force down his anger, but now... Fuck! Just wait obediently to be dealt with. Ding Feiwen knelt down with a paw. He also knew that he was horribly harmed by this misunderstanding. Who would have imagined that Ding Ping was actually so awesome to be able to take Ling Han as his master? This was what had caused everyone to misunderstand and raise him to a very high pedestal. But the higher he was raised, the harder he would fall. Oh no, he was really done for this time. Spare me, Lord Patriarch. He was already crying. He could feel darkness envelop his vision. Whom had he offended? The disciple of the emperor, a person that even Jia Wu had to kneel down to pay respects to. Ding Ping, what do you think should be done? The patriarch of the Ding clan asked Ding Ping quickly, his face all smiles. As the saying went, when a man achieves the Tao, his poultry and dogs rise to heaven as well. With Ding Ping as their signboard, wouldn't they all be able to move unhindered in this great Ling Empire? Ding Ping was neither arrogant nor impatient, and said, "Just deal with him as he should be dealt with in accordance with the rules of the clan." His horizons had, in that instant, been expanded further than ever before, disdaining to even bother with Ding Feiwen. However, his disdain did not mean that he would let Ding Feiwen get off scot-free. This person was petty and hateful, using public office to avenge private resentments. There was naturally a need to punish him. The patriarch of the Ding clan felt the matter was a little difficult to handle. Weren't the rules of the clan also decided by people? So, should he make the punishment lighter or heavier? He had better make the punishment heavier. Even saints had a temper, and Ding Feiwen had previously treated Ding Ping like that. Any other person wouldn't be able to tolerate it, right? Moreover, he was still angry himself. Take him away first, and imprison him in the dungeons to be dealt with later. Yes, Lord Patriarch. Ding Feiwen screamed, hurriedly begging for mercy from Ding Ping. Brother Ping, save me. On the basis of our previous friendship, I beg you to save me. I will definitely work extremely hard for you in the future. The members of the Ding clan were all disdainful. How could there be something as good as that? To work extremely hard for the disciple of the nation's leader. That would be 100-fold nobler and better than even the likes of Jia Wu's status as sect leader, right? And he called that mercy? That was too shameless. Ding Ping was naturally unperturbed. He had already seen through the true character of this vile person. Ding Feiwen cried out and begged for mercy, but no one paid him any heed. He was dragged out, his cries becoming softer and softer till they could no longer be heard. Big Brother Ping. Yi Yuan walked over, her beautiful eyes filled with adoration. Ding Ping merely cast a look at her, his heart filled with an indescribable serenity. In the past, he'd only needed to look at this woman, and he would feel heartfelt happiness, becoming excited. But from the moment he had seen through her real character, his first love had completely ended, leaving behind only bitter memories. In a mere day's time, he had experienced all the ups and downs of life, which also caused him to rapidly mature. He paid her no heed, and merely said to Jia Wu and Lu Jinshi, "Many thanks to both of you for coming to visit me, my lords. I am grateful." If they had not done so, he would not have been able to avoid the punishment of 300 strikes of the staff. It is what we should do," Jia Wu and Lu Jinshi both replied humbly. Although Ding Ping's current ability was incredibly weak, since he could be taken as disciple by Ling Han, they believed that he would definitely become an elite that could shake the whole world in future. Yi Yuan was naturally unwilling to lose this kind of wealthy husband. She continuously talked from the side about all the experiences they had shared in the past, wanting to stir Ding Ping's memories so that his old affection for her would be reignited. She was also very resentful. If it had been a day later, then Ding Ping would have only thought that she had broken the betrothal contract with him only under pressure from her clan. A woman like her would only lay the blame on others and have completely no intention of reflecting on her own wrongs. Yet Ding Ping had already given up on her and ignored her completely. In the end, unable to bear her continued pestering, he chased out all 3 members of the Yi clan. However, Yi Yuan was obviously not going to drop the matter so easily. After a few days, she would definitely return again. After conversing for a while, Jia Wu and Lu Jinshi both begged their leave and departed, saying as they left that no matter what Ding Ping encountered in future, he could seek them out for help to solve the issue. These words were naturally aimed at the members of the Ding clan. You all had best behave yourselves. for he was the disciple of the emperor himself. Soon afterward, the Ding clan naturally worshipped Ding Ping like he was their ancestor. Ling Han did not pay this matter any further attention. He only kept looking for the location of Corpse Boss. The fact that the latter would appear here clearly meant that there had to be some treasure here that was worth his appearance, or that the surviving members of the Thousand Corpse sect were nearby. On the second day, Ding Ping came to look for him, his attitude even more respectful, and also looked extremely grateful. His fate had been altered by Ling Han. Without Ling Han, he would still be that fallen genius and a piece of trash. Ling Han did not say much more, and merely guided him on the cultivation of the 9 dragons' tyrant body art. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. Ling Han's eyes suddenly snapped open from his position of sitting cross-legged on the ground. He sensed a very powerful aura. It was very vague, but how could it possibly evade his senses? Corpse Boss had appeared. Chapter 874. Bet on another 10 moves. Chapter 874. Bet on another 10 moves. Ling Han took hold of Ding Ping and disappeared from where he had originally stood in a flash. Ding Ping only felt his vision blur and discovered that he had surprisingly appeared in a forest. It took him a moment to distinguish that this was Horse Army Mountain and was at least more than 100 miles away from where they had initially been. It had only been a single step, yet they had traversed more than 100 miles. He could not help but be dumbfounded. The extent of his master's abilities had far exceeded his imagination. In front of them, there was a tall, slim, middle-aged man. He was as gentle as jade, and the sight of him would make anyone have a favorable impression of him. Was he the person that Master was waiting for? Ding Ping thought, "Brother Corpse Boss, it's been a long time since we last met." Ling Han clasped his fists in greeting. Although this person was a member of the Thousand Corpse sect, Ling Han still had quite a good impression of him. Instantly, the tension in Ding Ping's heart relaxed. Looking at how relaxed Ling Han was acting, this person should be a friend and not an enemy. Still, being someone whom his master would address as brother, he had to be a man in the top tier of the elites of this world. He had only thought that Ling Han had said, "Big brother sure one," otherwise his hair would definitely be standing on ends in terror. Corpse Boss could not help but grin bitterly and said, "It's all my fault for being greedy for wine, which exposed my location. However, Brother Ling is also very awesome. The sharpness of your senses has completely exceeded my imagination. I was sure that I would not be discovered if I came out to buy some wine." Ling Han smiled faintly. A person who had not established a nation would naturally not know the amazing uses of the totem. Even Ma Duo Bao, who had established his empire twice, did not know the correct position to establish a nation. He said, "Brother Corpse Boss, I only need to know an answer." Corpse Boss sighed, yet as he turned his eyes on Ding Ping, his eyes lit up and he said, "This brat's skeletal structure seems to stand out from the rest." "Naturally, he is my disciple," Ling Han answered, smiling. "You are still as confident as you have always been." Corpse Boss smiled as well, yet shook his head and said, "I'm afraid I cannot give you that answer. I haven't yet said what question I wanted to ask." Ling Han said with a smile, "Brother Ling, are you looking down on my intelligence?" Corpse Boss asked with slight displeasure. Ling Han raised his hands with a smile and said, all right. Brother Corpse Boss, why don't we have a bet? If you can block 10 moves from me, I will let you go. If not, then you have to tell me the location of the surviving members of the Thousand Corpse sect." Corpse Boss could not help but feel rueful. The first time he'd seen Ling Han, he had suggested a wager for the latter to block 10 moves from him, and as long as Ling Han could do so, he would not kill him. But now, just how many years had passed? It was Ling Han's turn to turn it around and offer him the same wager. Could such a large gap have appeared between the strength of the two sides? Corpse Boss could not believe it and said darkly, "I have already raised my cultivation to the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier, and awakened a mystical power. Now, my battle prowess can reach 15 stars, and you are confident that you can defeat me within 10 moves? How would you know if you don't try? Ling Han asked smilingly. For the last year, he had isolated himself and cultivated hard. Aside from himself, no one knew how strong his ability had become by now. 15 stars? If he wanted to, he could crush him directly. Corpse Boss's expression shifted continuously. If it was any other person, he would go along with the bet. Even if he lost, he could go back on his word as well. Who would be able to stop a shattering void tier elite if he wanted to flee? But he was different. His personality was very decisive. He was not one who would betray his companions. At the same time, he was also one who was loyal to his word. Thus, he had to consider the consequences of his possible loss. This caused him to feel very conflicted. On one hand, he definitely did not believe that he could not block 10 moves from Ling Han, and on the other, he had to consider the possibility of his defeat. It was only now that Ding Ping found out that Ling Han was actually on opposing sides with this person. He could not help but be shocked. As opponents, they could actually be as amiable as this towards each other. Ling Han snickered and said, "What is it? Is Brother Corpse Boss afraid?" Actually, with the abilities of Brother Corpse Boss, why do you need to stay in the 1,000 Corpse sect? Once we split open these skies, the world would expand. And where can you not go? Corpse Boss's pupil shrank, and he said, "Just slightly over a year ago, Ma Duo Bao had failed to open the skies, and you want to split open the skies as well. Are you not afraid of death?" Ling Han laughed loudly. As a man, what would be the harm in a glorious death? Furthermore, why would I not succeed? Corpse Boss became quiet. After a while, he finally said, "On the basis that you have such determination to split open the skies, I shall accept your conditions." Yet Ding Ping was completely at a loss. What? Splitting open the skies? Did that refer to actually splitting open these skies? How could the skies be opened? Additionally, it seemed like this matter was incredibly dangerous, and there was a possibility of death, which made him extremely worried. Ling Han raised his right hand and said, "Then get ready to receive my blow." He did not even need to prepare, and directly delivered a palm strike. Hiss! Yet Corpse Boss was astonished. The strength of this palm strike had exceeded 10 stars. Too terrifying, too frightening. Ordinarily, even if one had cultivated to the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier, his strength would only be on par with the battle prowess of 9 stars of Shattering Void tier. Then, with use of martial arts techniques and secret techniques, his battle prowess would be able to break through the limit of 9 stars and reach 10 stars, 11 stars, or even 12 stars. But when the strength itself was powerful, then the battle prowess would naturally soar accordingly, just like how he was at the peak of the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier, and his strength had reached 10 stars of Shattering Void tier. With use of secret techniques, he could further increase his battle prowess by another 4 stars. This was very, very amazing. But Ling Han, it was obvious that he had just broken through to the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier. That aura that had yet to be stabilized could not be more apparent. He had just advanced into the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier, yet his strength had already exceeded 10 stars. Then, how much farther could he raise his strength by the time he reached the real peak of Shattering Void tier and reinforced his cultivation? 12 stars? Or even 13 stars? This was a fuck asterisk monster. However, no matter how stunned Corpse Boss was, he was still an elite of 2 eras. His reaction speed was not the slightest bit slow. He immediately crossed his arms, forming them into sharp claws, and clawed out at Ling Han. A pattern appeared on his hands, and they actually seemed like the hands of an immortal. Although that skeletal hand had been snatched away by Yi Shuang Shuang, Corpse Boss had apparently still comprehended some profound mystery from it. Thankfully, Yi Shuang Shuang had acted early on enough. If she met with Corpse Boss again now, then it would really be undecided who the victor would be. Yet Ling Han was completely nonchalant. He lowered his right hand, and Wang A terrifying energy gushed out, trying to suppress Corpse Boss completely. Without the slightest bit of fanciness, he directly used his power to crush all. He was really as overbearing as that. Pum! The two fighters came into close quarters, and their extremely powerful energy set out to form a shock wave that spread out in all directions from their clash. If their attacks clashed solidly, not only would the whole mountain range be destroyed, even the cities far off would be unable to escape this disaster. They were that strong. Yet after these energy waves spread out as far as 30 meters, they were immediately blocked as if there was an invisible wall. Power of the nation. Ling Han had not used power of the nation to empower himself, but had formed it into a cage to completely control the energy that seeped out in this extremely small space. What? Corpse Boss exclaimed in shock. His eyes were filled with astonishment as if he had seen a ghost. Strictly speaking, he was a ghost himself. Your power has reached 13 stars, Corpse Boss exclaimed, stunned. How could that be? The gap of a single star at the shattering void tier meant a world of difference, and reaching a battle prowess of 13 stars with pure power was practically being a monster. What was more terrifying, though, was the fact that Ling Han had not yet used power of the nation to empower himself. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "Recently, my cultivation has become more rounded. Additionally, my body arts has also had slight improvement, and without my knowledge, my power has increased further. Sorry about that." Chapter 875 Understanding. Chapter 875 Understanding. Sorry about that, your sister. Corpse Boss felt like he was about to go crazy. Did this kind of monster really exist? He had only rounded his cultivation and improved the standard of his body arts, and his power had begun to spike madly again. Attaining another star seemed to be something as easy as eating for him. Ling Han was also speechless. His current strength had primarily been improved on by the 9 Dragons' Tyrant body art. After breaking through to the shattering void tier, this body art had finally burst out with a terrifying might. At the extreme, it could reach the power of 9 true dragons. This was nothing like the kind of false true dragon that Hellion Tianyan was. In the immortal realm, only those of the dragon race that had reached Genesis tier could be called true dragons. The power of 9 true dragons, how frightening would that be? Previously, when he had helped Ding Ping to remold his body, it was also a training exercise for himself. Along with the 3 days of minor seclusion he had gone through afterwards, his body arts had improved abruptly. Now his brute strength was at least 3 times stronger than his origin power. This 9 Dragons Tyrant body art had finally shown its true might. According to Ling Han's estimation, origin power cultivated to the extreme could reach the strength of a single true dragon. Then his pure strength, at most, would be able to reach 9 times the strength of his origin power, of course. This was also because the origin power cultivation technique he was cultivating was not good enough, and so could only reach the basic level of 1, or perhaps not even reach 1. Then in that case, if he did not depend on the empowerment from power of the nation, his life force would also be able to reach 12 stars of shattering void tier. Ling Han suddenly sank into deep thought. Why was there a need to depend on power of the nation to reach the extreme? Why could an individual not rely on himself to be able to push his cultivation level to the extreme? In the world of martial arts, the final goal was always individual strength. You couldn't possibly bear a nation on your shoulders and run around everywhere, right? Understanding finally dawned on him. Power of the nation could only be supplementary, and could not be a means to be relied on. He wanted to depend on his own power to advance to the level of 20 stars of the shattering void tier, the true limit. A muscle in Corpse Boss's cheek twitched. After Ling Han delivered an attack, it was as if he had gone dumb. Just how far was he looking down on him? I am indeed no match to you, but being so absent-minded like this, you've gone too far, haven't you? Ling Han, he roared in fury. Ling Han came back to himself and could not help but smile as he said, Sorry. I suddenly thought of something. To lose focus in the midst of battle. What exactly were you thinking about? What were you thinking about? Corpse Boss could not help but feel curious. I was thinking about how to improve my strength to reach 20 stars of shattering void tier. Ling Han did not cover up the truth. He really wanted to discuss it with another person, especially someone like Corpse Boss who had been an elite for 2 eras. Unfortunately, he could no longer remember the matters of his last life. Corpse Boss inhaled sharply and said, Are you sure you are not talking about battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier, but strength at the level of 20 stars of shattering void tier? That's right. Ling Han nodded. You monster, Corpse Boss pointed out. Hey, brother Corpse Boss, though we have only met once. We did have an enjoyable conversation. Is it really appropriate for you to insult me like this? Ling Han asked with a laugh. If your strength could rush up to 20 stars of shattering void tier, then what level would your battle prowess reach? Corpse Boss rolled his eyes repetitively. Just the mere thought of it was terrifying. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, Humans should have some dreams, shouldn't they? Corpse Boss was stunned momentarily before finally nodding somberly. He said yes. Then, stretching out both arms, he said, There are still 9 moves. Ling Han grinned. His right hand stretched out again to press down on Corpse Boss. Corpse Boss received the attack and shouted, Ling Han, show me all your ability. Don't make me look down on you. Is that so? Ling Han used his other hand to rub his nose. All right, then. He used the earth overturning seal and circulated the thunderclap 9th heaven. Hung! A brilliant golden light as well as blazing lightning exuded from his right hand. Pung! His palm pressed down, and there was suddenly no sign of Corpse Boss anymore. Brother Corpse Boss, are you all right? Ling Han asked as he withdrew his hand. Corpse Boss climbed back up, coughing up blood endlessly. His face was filled with desolation as he mumbled, I actually did not even manage to block a single move. I couldn't even block a single move. One had to know that he was an existence that possessed battle prowess of 15 stars of shattering void tier, and if Ling Han had not been lenient, that previous blow would be enough to take his life. The gap was too big. After staring blankly for a moment, his gaze gradually became firm again. If Ling Han succeeded in splitting open the skies, then he would be able to enter into the mortal realm, and he would definitely be able to find a means to become even stronger. Just as Ling Han said, what if he could increase his pure strength to the level of 20 stars of shattering void tier? The members of the 1,000 Corpse sect have hidden about 200 miles east of here. There is an ancient cemetery there, Corpse Boss said, staring at Ling Han. The next time we meet, I hope we can battle to our heart's content. All right. Ling Han agreed decisively. He had always had a very good impression of Corpse Boss. Corpse Boss stared at Ling Han for a moment, then turned and left. Ding Ping watched from the side, his blood racing, wanting nothing more than to possess such battle prowess at this moment as well so that he could have a vigorous battle himself. Ling Han smiled and said, The next time that man comes to challenge me, you will accept his challenge on my behalf. Ding Ping was initially stunned before he immediately became so excited that he almost passed out. He could feel the fighting spirit in his whole body soar up to the heavens, and some unknown emotion awakened in himself, which made him experience a fathomless heroic spirit. He half knelt on the ground and said, I will definitely not disappoint you, master. Ling Han nodded and said, Now I should go clear away the last problem on the path of splitting open the skies. He brought Ding Ping with him. A few steps later, he arrived at the cemetery that Corpse Boss had spoken of. As the 1,000 Corpse sect cultivated corpse techniques, their entire bodies were filled with corpse chi, and if they were buried underground, no one could possibly distinguish them from actual corpses. Thus, graves were naturally their best hiding place. Unless Ling Han was determined enough to dig out all the graves in the world, it would definitely be impossible for him to find them. But now with a man inside, it was a different story. Without another word, Ling Han directly formed his arm into the shape of a bow, formed his origin power into an arrow, and circulated out the annihilating dragon star arrow. From afar, he aimed at that ancient cemetery. His hand loosened, and Xiao, the arrow of origin power, was fired and Hong, shot into the ancient cemetery. It was best for the annihilating dragon star arrow to have the base of an actual arrow, and only then would the arrow shot express its greatest might. However, Ling Han was too strong by now, and he had absolutely no need for an actual arrow to express an incredibly powerful might. This was a real secret technique of the immortal realm. The arrow of origin power shot down, and the whole ancient cemetery instantly disappeared, becoming a deep pit. Xiao, xiao, xiao! A dozen overpeople shot up into the skies. The 9th Underworld King, Corpse 2, Rong Huan Xian, as well as 9 elders that were all skin and bones. Corpse Qi wound around their whole bodies, and if they appeared in the middle of the night, they would definitely give anyone a deadly shock. With this strike, all those below heaven tier would be exterminated. Ling Han. When he saw Ling Han, Rong Huan Xian immediately gritted his teeth. He and Ling Han could really be considered old foes. They had been entangled with each other from the very beginning in the desolate north. But aside from their first meeting when he had gotten the upper hand, he had always been suppressed by Ling Han afterwards. This caused a thorn to be stuck deeply in his heart. One had to know that he, too, had advanced into the heaven tier by now. To break through so quickly it was frightening, but compared with Ling Han, it was really not worth mentioning. In front of Ling Han, he paled in comparison, and could only become a pitiful background for Ling Han's brilliance. He would not submit. He was also one who had obtained the favor of the heavens. Chapter 876, Breakthrough. Chapter 876, Breakthrough. I haven't seen you for a long time. This time, I will surely kill you. Ling Han raised his hand as he greeted and smiled at all of them. Today, don't even think that any of you can escape. The 9th Underworld King couldn't help but humph lowly. Even the elites from the 5 great sects would not have dared to utter such gibberish to him. Now, a junior actually dared to show him such contempt. He had never really held Ling Han in high regard. It wasn't Ling Han who had put down the 5 great sects, and the unification of the 4 seas was the credit of Hellion Tianyin alone. What did Ling Han do? Only reaping what he had not sown. Junior, you are too arrogant, he remarked coldly. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, Evil and unorthodox cult, appearing before me, you had better fall to your knees and accept death. Hong, endless imperial might burst forth. Pa, 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 aside from the 9th Underworld King, Corpse 2, and Rong Huan Xian, the remaining 9 people knelt down in unison. Rong Huan Xian's entire body was trembling, and blood vessels were even throbbing on top of his skin. The exaggerated protrusion would make anyone who saw it suffer from goosebumps. In fact, he was incapable of resisting such mighty pressure, but his heart was truly unyielding and unwilling to submit. Thereby, he was forcing himself to surpass his limit of resistance. Pa, 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 the bones in his whole body were cracking, and tears of blood flowed from his eyes. There was blood spewing from his nostrils and ears. The disciples of Thousand Corpse sect cultivated corpse techniques and had a pitifully small amount of blood in their body. Although he appeared to be only bleeding from the 7 apertures, in fact the damage was extremely major. Obstinately choosing to be a corpse over being a good human? Then I will just grant your wish. Ling Han's eyes shot open, and pa, 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 the 9 people on their knees simultaneously dropped dead to the ground. So what if they were heaven tier cultivators? In the presence of his present terrifying power, quantity no longer made any difference. Ea! The ninth underworld king was about to go mad from anger. These 9 people were the 9 guardian priests of the 1,000-corpse sect. Apart from Corpse Boss, Corpse 2, Rong Huanxian, and himself, they were the strongest masters and the cornerstone of the sect. Now, they had actually died before even launching a single strike. How could he not be angered? Die. He brandished the demonic noise saber. Suddenly, the sky was filled with the sound of demonic whistling, which surged violently towards Ling Han. Ling Han gave a slight push with his raised palms, and the world suddenly became silent. So what if the other party had the demonic noise saber in his hands? The battle prowess of the 9th Underworld King was at most 13 stars. Otherwise, wouldn't he have been able to wipe out the Sword Emperor and the others at the beginning? Let me do it! Corpse 2 stood out, his face bearing a cautious expression. He was an ancient corpse returned to life, and he did not have a bottleneck. Within the 1,000-corpse sect, he had received the dual nurturing of the 3 lives, corpse casket, and pond of the underworld. At present, he had actually reached the 9th layer of the shattering void tier, and his battle prowess was barely at 15 stars, only somewhat modest compared to Corpse Boss. As Corpse Boss was not present, he was the 1,000-corpse sect's strongest elite. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "If anyone here can block one strike for me, I will spare his life." Ha! Corpse 2 sneered. This is extreme madness indeed. Do you think you are that dead fatty? 1,000-corpse sect had remained low-key, all this while not because of being afraid of Ling Han, but the 7 kings. What's so funny? Ling Han said solemnly. He didn't have a good impression of Corpse 2, and directly delivered a slap. Pum! As the single slap flew across, Corpse 2 stared at Ling Han with an expression of complete astonishment. He turned to the 9th Underworld King, and was about to say something when his body suddenly turned into a bloody fog and directly dissipated into the atmosphere. This. The 9th Underworld King only felt a chill seeping from beneath the soles of his feet, directly rushing to the top of his brain. Before, Ling Han had said that anyone who could block one strike from him would be spared. This was neither shameless boasting nor overestimating one's capability. Rather, his strength was powerful to the point of defying natural law. The 9th Underworld King did not have the courage to block one strike. Immediately, he ducked and leapt into the 3 lives corpse casket. This was the most valuable treasure of the 1,000-corpse sect that had existed for many years. It was indestructible. Ling Han glanced at it. He could not help but feel an eagerness to try something out with his current battle prowess. Could he smash the 3 lives corpse casket? He raised his right hand and began condensing sword intent. For smashing this kind of extremely defensive treasure, of course, the last form of the 3 styles of black origins breaking the formation effect would be the best. However, Ling Han did not want to use a level 10 spirit tool to smash it, fearing that Revere Life's sword would also be damaged. Therefore, he decided to punch using sword intent. He'd directly smash it using brute force. His body was at the level of godly metal, wondered how many times harder this would be compared to level 10 precious metal. Precisely after 20 breaths, Ling Han gathered his strength to the peak before punching out. The world was eclipsed. Hung! The eye of heavenly Tao appeared, flickering above Ling Han. The power of this punch was too strong, enough to cause devastating damage to this world, thereby making the eye of heavenly Tao appear. Pum! As the punch hit, the 3 lives corpse casket was suddenly blasted open. One could clearly see the shocked expression on the 9th Underworld King's face was startled to the extreme. This was something that he could never have imagined. 3 lives corpse casket could actually be smashed. However, the 9th Underworld King was also instantly blown to bits by this terrifying power, and even the demonic noise saber beside him was broken into 7 chunks, its demonic patterns completely wiped out. Ling Han's current strength had reached the point where he could smash a level 10 spirit tool with his bare hands. Ling Han turned to look at the Eye of Heavenly Tao. This wasn't the original one, for there wasn't any wound on the eyeball. It would not die. As long as the heavens and earth were still present in this small world, the Eye of Heavenly Tao would be revived. This was only the embodiment of the will of heaven and earth. Its roots were the entire world. As the world was not destroyed, it naturally would also not be destroyed. However, after ascending to the immortal realm, the lower realm would only be a part of the immortal realm. It would become part of the will of the immortal realm. Naturally, there would no longer be any Eye of Heavenly Tao. Get lost, Ling Han said as he pointed to Eye of Heavenly Tao. With his current strength, wiping out the Eye of Heavenly Tao would be an easy feat, however. As everything had yet to be arranged accordingly, he would not split open the sky for the time being. The Eye of Heavenly Tao exuded a chill. It represented the heaven and earth of this realm, and was the supreme ruler thereof. Now, someone actually dared to disrespect it. However, it did not make a move. As Ling Han did not violate the rules of this world, there was no reason for it to make a move. If it did not act according to the rules, then it would also lose the meaning of its existence. In the blink of an eye, the Eye of Heavenly Tao disappeared. Watching from the sidelines, Ding Ping felt that his hands and feet turned cold as an inexplicable excitement arose within him. That is the will of heaven and earth, and it was actually ordered to retreat by Master. The greatness of Master's power could no longer be tolerated in this world. No wonder he has to split open the sky. Ha ha ha, I have broken through. Rong Huanxian suddenly yelled and jumped up. His entire body was pumped up with powerful qi, like a tide soaring into the sky. He deserved to be called a genius. Under intense pressure, not only did he not collapse, but he actually faced the problem head-on and obtained a breakthrough. He was instantly successful in crossing over to the shattering Void Tiara. Truly amazing feat. Ling Han, I am also in the shattering Void Tier now. Rong Huan Xian bellowed. I am not afraid of you. He was full of enthusiasm, but when his gaze swept across, he could not help but be dumbfounded. Where are the 9th Underworld King and Corpse 2? Before, he had been resisting Ling Han's imposing qi and reached the point of full concentration. He had not realized what had happened during that period. Pooh! Ding Ping immediately burst out laughing. Although he had a low cultivation level, he could still see it. Rong Huanxian's cultivation level was still far off compared to the other 2 people earlier. Even those 2 were no match for a single strike from Master. So what if you have broken through? You're still a long way off. Was he trying to be funny? Chapter 877. Settling Unfinished Matters. Chapter 877. Settling Unfinished Matters. Rong Huanxian couldn't help feeling tumultuous fury. A mere mortal actually dared to laugh at him. Ling Han gave a faint smile and said, You are too inferior. Even my disciple looks down on you. Where did you get the courage to act with such arrogance? Damn it! With a flash, Rong Huanxian charged towards Ding Ping. He wanted to suck dry the blood of this mortal as punishment, and wanted Ling Han to lose a disciple so that he could enjoy the expression of agony that would appear on the latter's face. Boom! Thunderclouds were rolling in the sky. Heaven and earth sensed that he had broken through to the shattering void tier and sent down a heavenly calamity one. Ling Han murmured, I heard that outsiders can't intervene with the heavenly calamity, otherwise they will be sucked into it. However, I can even split open this piece of heaven and earth. So what is there to fear if I am sucked into the heavenly calamity? It will be a good chance for me to temper my body of lightning further. He chuckled and made a grab with his hand. Without a doubt, Rong Huanxian fell into his hands. How could he be a match for Ling Han when he had only just stepped into the shattering void tier? What? Disbelief was written all over Rong Huan Xian's face. Before, he was only at the heaven tier. So how could he have sensed the formidability of Ling Han's strength? He had assumed that Ling Han had only stepped into the shattering void tier 1 or 2 years before him, and his cultivation would be at the second or third layer of the shattering void tier at most. How could the gap be so huge? Ling Han, I will pass through the heavenly calamity. Do you want to accompany me? Then he immediately smirked. Who would not suffer when crossing through the heavenly calamity? Ling Han may appear incredibly strong, but the stronger his strength when he crosses the heavenly calamity, the stronger will be the corresponding power of the heavenly calamity, and the more likely it is for him to die. You think too much. Ling Han just grabbed at Rong Huan Xian. With his strength, 100 Rong Huan Xians added together would not be able to escape. Quang! The heavenly calamity struck down with a bolt of divine lightning at Rong Huan Xian, drawing Ling Han in as well. Immediately, there was a second bolt of divine lightning, the target being Ling Han. However, as the distance between the two was so close, the 2 bolts of lightning drew them both inbound together. No! Rong Huan Xian screamed out in alarm. Even if he were to pass through the heavenly calamity in his strongest state, the rate of success would only be 50-50. But now he was shackled by Ling Han and had to pass through 2 people's worth of heavenly calamity. Was it possible for him to pass it? Had Ling Han gone mad? In order to kill him, he would actually put himself at risk. Quang! 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 Divine lightning pounded on them continuously. Given Rong Huan Xian's physique, how long would he be able to withstand it? He was instantly turned to ashes. Before his last breath, Rong Huan Xian's eyes were filled with bitter resentment because nothing happened when the divine lightning hit Ling Han's body, and they rebounded one by one. Fuck this. He would die with regrets. In the next life, he definitely should not encounter a monster like Ling Han. To be born in the same era as him was a tragedy in itself. Ling Han felt neither joy nor sorrow. With his current strength, he naturally would not care about defeating the 1,000 Corpse sect, but he had nevertheless eliminated an unstable element. He smashed the remaining 2 pieces of the 3 lives corpse casket with a punch. The pond of the underworld was naturally formed in this realm, so it would be pointless to destroy it. It was formed from the condensed yin qi of this realm. Therefore, he could only seal it off below Million Treasure City using a formation technique, but it would basically be impossible for the 1,000 Corpse sect to reactivate it. Ling Han took Dingping back to the imperial capital. On one hand, he had announced to the whole world that Dingping was his apprentice. On the other hand, he invited all his subjects for a final conference. After splitting open the sky, he had to become a hostage. Hence, the Rain Emperor would become the regent, acting on behalf of the highest authority within the government. However, this would not bring about much difference. Ling Han had always been a ruler only in spirit. He practically never dealt with the affairs of the government. As long as he did not die, this would be sufficient. Really, his presence would cause little impact. This made Ling Han dumbfounded. When an emperor came to this, was he a success or failure? After splitting open the sky, some clans would definitely be tempted to collude with the forces of the immortal realm, disintegrating the Great Ling Empire and causing division within the nation. Therefore, a cleanup campaign would be carried out now. Those who were not loyal would directly have all their powers revoked. This needed not be dealt with by Ling Han. He made a trip to the Kong clan. The heaven-grade alchemist Kong Zisher could possibly be the descendant of his apprentice, Kong Shuyuan. But after Ling Han had inquired, he knew that this Kong clan could only be regarded as a half-blood descendant of Kong Shuyuan. The patriarch of the Kong clan was the adopted son of Kong Shuyuan. He had no idea how, but anyway, the latter did not enter the immortal realm together, but had left behind his bloodline. Before his 4 apprentices were found, Ling Han did not intend to reveal his identity. He then left after bidding goodbye, causing the members of the Kong clan to feel uneasy. What was the meaning of His Majesty? Ling Han's current power and influence was just too great. In the past, heaven-grade alchemists were still detached from all. There was no need for them to look up to anyone. But now that all land was under imperial authority, even heaven-grade alchemists would have to bow their heads in submission. The alchemist society no longer stood detached, but had become a force directly controlled by the government, bringing about further consolidation of the imperial power. Ling Han also summoned the geniuses of the younger generation. After splitting open the sky, Ling Han hoped that they could go out to make their own mark and improve themselves through trials in the immortal realm. After they achieved success, he hoped them to return and serve the great Ling Empire. This was of course dangerous. In the immortal realm, their background mattered not. Furthermore, the number of elites in the immortal realm was as numerous as the clouds in the sky. Even Ling Han could not compare. Upon leaving the great Ling Empire, it was inevitable that they would face the risk of death. But only in this way could the geniuses who came back later become elites. When Yi Jian, Xianyuan Ziguang, and others were feeling rueful. In the past, Ling Han was considered to be equal to them in strength, or even inferior to them, but now, the other party had become the most powerful person in the world, but they were still merely at the deity transformation tier. This had made them acknowledge that there were some people in the world who were peerless monsters, and whom they could never be compared with. Ling Han gave words of encouragement to everyone. These young people might be the pillars of the future great Ling Empire, and he had high hopes for them. But Ling Han wasn't too dependent. For the great Ling Empire, he carried a greater responsibility. He believed in his own strength. Only by strengthening himself could he become truly powerful. He would, of course, keep the best for his own people. Ling Han would naturally take the most care of Yu Kaiyu, infinitely supplying him with all kinds of cultivation resources, and even passed on several mystical powers to the latter. However, the passing of mystical powers to another wasn't a simple matter. It required the mark of the secret technique to be stripped off from the mind. It was a kind of harm in itself. Therefore, Ling Han did not extensively spread the knowledge of the mystical powers, but only passed it on to Feng Piyun, the Rain Emperor, and Murong, his 3 adopted brothers. Taking advantage of this time, he was doing his best to make arrangements, as once he split open the sky, he wouldn't have the chance anymore. Ding Ping, as his 5th disciple, naturally was given priority in being nurtured. In the future, after Ling Han's departure, Ding Ping would follow the Rain Emperor and the others for cultivation practice. Then he would step out of the great Ling Empire and learn through his own experiences. After half a month, Ling Han decided to split open the sky. He did not invite the whole world. Not that he wasn't confident enough, but rather that he was confident in the success, and thus did not need anyone to witness his greatness. Chapter 878. Ling Han Splitting Open the Sky. Chapter 878. Ling Han Splitting Open the Sky. However, with splitting open the sky being such a major occasion, how could it be concealed without any leakage of information? Besides, Ling Han also had no intention to conceal it. He clearly told the whole world the day of splitting open the sky, but he did not send out any invitation to others to come and observe the ceremony. Those parties with keen ears had already rushed over to witness this valiant undertaking, and the sea race was no exception. However, having experienced failure once, everyone wasn't very optimistic about Ling Han. As powerful as Ma Duo Bao had been, who was the world's strongest killing formation, still had gotten killed by the elites of the immortal realm. No matter how strong Ling Han was, how could he be comparable to Ma Duo Bao? At least, this wasn't something that could be achieved in the time of just slightly over a year. If Ling Han was to split open the sky again 100 years later, maybe there might still be a chance, but now. Everyone knew why it had to be done, Now the day of full invasion by the 5 sects from the immortal realm was drawing closer and closer. At that time, even if there was suppression from the realm powers, these powerful elites would have the opportunity to burst forth with an immortal-level attack. With their interference, there would be even less hope of splitting open the sky. It had to be done soon. People were praying in their hearts. Ling Han had to succeed. Otherwise, they would soon be refined into a realm pill, using their own lives for the benefit of improving the cultivation of the immortal realm's elites. Thinking about this made them so furious that they were about to throw up blood. If this day was to come, then they would rather commit suicide than to benefit those fucking elites of the immortal realm. This was one of the reasons why the 5 great sects needed to continuously brainwash them for the past millennia. Ingredients ought not to be wasted. Brat, are you really sure? Helian Tianyan asked solemnly. Presently, his strength had already been restored to the peak condition, and even surpassed it. His conventional battle prowess had already reached 21 stars, which was a lot more powerful than Ma Duo Bao had originally been. Ling Han smiled and said, "Haven't you gotten enough beatings from me?" Helian Tianyan could not help feeling depressed. He had fought with Ling Han before, and the latter did not even need to be boosted with power of the nation to completely defeat him, was nearly beaten silly. "You are such a monster, brat. Not only is your physique tyrannical, but your pure strength is also just as frightening." He rolled his eyes continuously. "Now I am suspecting who is really the descendant of the true dragon." Legend had it that the power of the true dragon was the strongest, and that had been the reason why the immortal realm had used the peak strength of the true dragon as a benchmark of strength. He obviously did not have the true dragon's bloodline, but his power was capable of surpassing him, a dragon descendant with the purest true dragon's bloodline. This was simply unimaginable. Ling Han smiled. The true dragon wouldn't necessarily be the strongest in the immortal realm. Otherwise, the 9 dragons' tyrant body art would be a joke. Also, one needed not look very far, but just take his 5th disciple as an example. Even if Ding Ping didn't cultivate the 9 dragons' tyrant body art, his power would be stronger than other martial artists of the same level by more than 10-fold. In comparison to those of the same level, would the true dragon bloodline be this powerful? Therefore, in the immortal realm, there ought to be beings even more incredible than the true dragon. Your disciple is also a freak. Helian Tianyan evidently thought of it and became more depressed. As if having one freak appear wasn't enough, now there was a second one. But you really have a lot of room for improvement. Why not wait longer? Helian Tianyan advised once again. At least Ling Han had yet to cultivate the power of regulation. Ling Han shook his head. After splitting open the sky, the power of regulation of the small world would not be applicable in the immortal realm. It would only be a waste of time. So he decided that he would cultivate the power of regulation after he had entered the immortal realm. After splitting open the skies, Ding Ping will be put under your guidance for training. I will also pass on to you the 9 dragons' tyrant body art. If you are not able to train the kid properly, I will definitely cut you to pieces later. Ling Han said with a smile. When it came to the 9 dragons' tyrant body art, Helian Tianyan immediately became excited. He said, I never thought that there is such a technique in this world. I find it unbelievable that there is a kind of power that could surpass the true dragon. Haha, you just wait until I have successfully completed his cultivation. I will definitely conquer the whole of the immortal realm, and make the 5 sects, the Ao clan, and the other bastards kneel down and proclaim their defeat. Haha, don't talk nonsense, or someone will say that I am procrastinating. Ling Han waved his hand while watching the sky. Suddenly he flew up. I am splitting open the sky today, he announced to the whole world through the totem. Once he had finished, it immediately triggered the shouts of the people of the whole world. He did not intend for every major force to come and observe the ceremony. But, with splitting open the sky being such an important event, Ling Han had long ago informed the world that he would be splitting open the sky today. The moment he showed himself, the respective major forces waiting for a long time in the vicinity, just outside the imperial capital, all became anxious. If Ling Han was to fail in splitting open the sky, then they would be forced to accept fate. Taking advantage of the fact that the 5 sects of the immortal realm had yet to invade, they would enjoy their life to the fullest. Then, when the time came, those who ought to accept their fate and those who ought to commit suicide would do so accordingly. Their one and only hope. Moreover, after experiencing failure once, especially when it had been incomparably close to success, everyone had developed a vulnerable heart. He had to succeed. Master! Ding Ping gripped his hands into tight fists. Now he already knew what splitting open the sky represented, and what Ling Han's failure would signify doomsday for all living beings. He hated himself. Why was his strength so weak that he could only watch helplessly and couldn't offer any assistance in the least? Kid, put great effort into your cultivation. Your future achievements will not be any less than your master's. Helian Tianyan said. This human gave him a terrifying feeling undoubtedly. His strength wasn't all that powerful, but it could burst forth 100-fold. This power was amazing even if he didn't cultivate spiritual qi. Perhaps a freak like him needed not cultivate origin power, as it would just be a waste of time. This was because origin power could not burst forth 100-fold in might through his extraordinary bone structure. Ding Ping nodded. He wanted to share some of his master's burden. He had heard that after entering the immortal realm, his master would be forced to become a hostage. How humiliating was this for the sovereign of a nation? Being the latter's disciple, he felt pain as if he was experiencing it himself. I must become stronger and be capable of becoming Master's right-hand man instead of hiding behind Master and letting him take the pressure alone. You must succeed. The Rain Emperor, Feng Piyin, Mu Rongqing, Yu Kaiyu, and others said with their fists clenched. You must succeed. Everyone was rallying in their hearts. They held their breaths, feeling nervous and tense like a taut bowstring. The lower realm could no longer retreat. Yet Ling Han felt extremely calm. Unless the 5 sects of the immortal realm were as strong as the elites of the Rock Palace, with the level of strength of that elite last time, he was absolutely unafraid. The issue was that the 5 sects' power was only of the Sun-Moon tier, so where would a greater elite come from? His current battle prowess was on a completely different level from Ma Duo Bao's. Furthermore, his physique was the level of godly metal. From the attacks of the immortal realm, after they had been weakened by the realm powers for a while, he could totally destroy them, and they would not be able to hurt even a strand of his hair. To him, splitting open the sky was merely a journey he had to go through. Shua, he brandished the mountain and river axe. Long live! Long live! Long live! The whole world was rallying through the totem, coming together to form a vast ocean. Ling Han held onto the mountain and river axe. A terrifying force began circulating, and Wang, the mountain and river axe glowed, emitting endless might. He was currently all too powerful, and brute force and origin power burst forth in unison. His strength reached 13 stars, and coupled with the circulation of all kinds of martial arts and secret techniques, his battle prowess had already attained the height of 23 stars. He had yet to utilize the power of the nation, and it was already Ma Duo Bao's ultimate battle prowess. Even more frightening was that he still has room for improvement. Splitting open the sky would take no effort at all.